Yeah. All right. It's that time. We're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Yes, Commissioner Donaldson.
Here.
Commissioner Kent.
Here.
Commissioner Jennings.
Here.
Commissioner McLeod.
Here.
And Chair Waddy. Here. Great. Item 3, any ex parte communications?
No.
Great. That brings us to item 4, consent calendar. Consent calendar items are items considered to be routine and will be enacted on by one motion. Unless any member of the commission or member of the audience wishes to pull any of these items from the consent calendar. We have item 4-1, the draft meeting minutes from the February 13th meeting. Item 4.2, application 18-066, design review and parking reduction at 844 Ramona. 4-3, permit application 19-015, a design review and conditional use for a project at 1054 Nielsen. And item 4-4, project application 19-011, design review for a new duplex at 1051 Keynes. Does anyone want to comment or pull any of those items? Anyone on the commission? Or?
Yes, sorry. The Keynes, I'd like to pull Keynes.
Okay, that's what I
Agree with that. I have a question for staff on 844 Ramona, so it should take just a second. And I have comments on 1054 Nielsen, so I don't think that'll take long either. So I guess I'll pull those two as well. And
So that, I guess, just leaves us with the draft minutes?
leaves the minutes. I have no problem with the minutes. I can move approval of the consent calendar, what's left of it.
I had a couple things for the minutes.
Minutes, okay. Pull them too.
Well, can I go ahead?
Sure.
Just about 904 Masonic, I thought the applicant stated that he would provide 8 bike lockers, not 4. He talked about 4 on the ground and then 4 stacked above. So that's not reflected in the statement.
We can go back and check that.
Okay, I mean, I thought that's what he was committing to, and I just would like to see that in the record. That's it, really, so.
Okay. With that, looking in?
Yeah, that's all I have.
Okay. So there's a motion to approve the draft minutes, item 4-1.
Okay, and I guess with the staff will check or clarify that one item then, yeah, then that's fine.
Great.
Okay, I'll move.
I can second.
Great.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nope.
I abstained because I wasn't here.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Commissioner Kent abstaining. Then with that, move to item 4-2, the first item pulled from the consent calendar, design review and parking reduction in 844 Ramona. Commissioner Donaldson, did you have some questions about that?
I do, a couple of things. So I'm curious, Ann or Christopher, that project, that building existing has a fence on in the front yard, right in the front yard. And is that because it's in the Solano commercial zoning? Or?
Yeah, there actually is some permit history on that. It was approved, I think, sometime in the 90s, so it's been there for quite a while.
Oh, yeah, I know that. So it was approved then? Okay, all right. Then I think that answers my question, and I have nothing further on that project. So then I guess this a motion is appropriate then to approve planning application 18066, design review and a conditional use permit for a new dwelling unit at 844 Ramona. Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Let's take that unanimously. We'll move us to item 4-3, the next item that was on the consent for application 19-015, a second-story addition and conditional use at 1054 Nielsen Street. Commissioner Donaldson, did you also have a question on that one?
So I pulled this one too. I like the project, but I have a design review comment on it, and maybe other commissioners will agree with me or not. I think it's unusual to have the tapered columns that are traditionally on craftsman-style homes throughout the city on the second floor. I've never seen any on the second floor before. I was looking at it hard, and I think in this design it works, but it's not consistent with any other craftsman-style building I've seen or we've seen before that I know of. And I don't know. I just want to make that comment more than anything else. I don't think that I would vote against it because of that. I don't know if anyone else had any thoughts on that at all. Yeah, let's see if you
pull
can.
that up, Ian?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
you might be having an internet connection issue.
Oh,
Trying to get this up.
yeah. No internet. Yeah.
Is it in? Oh, I would have to check the plans. We're gonna go a little analog here and pull out the paper plans. And I'm gonna go get Jeremy to find out why we don't get on here.
Is it in the rear? It's in the front?
Pardon?
Those columns are in the front or the rear?
Yeah. It's right here, that. Those columns there, the tapered columns, they echo the traditional, so I don't know, that was it, yeah. Yeah, I don't know what it was. Yeah. He didn't show it, yeah, it's this right here that I was concerned about, so you can pass that down. Show other people, whatever. To the other commissioners, I guess. You see, I just think that's really unusual to have these tapered columns that are so craftsman-like up on the second floor.
And that's just.
Never seen it
That's
before.
exactly a reveal, right? Or is that actually a porch up there?
It's a reveal. It's not a porch. I'm pretty sure it's not a porch. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, just a reveal, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of engaged columns at the corners is what I'm seeing.
Sorry, can you say that again?
Oh, they look like engaged columns at the corners. They don't look like freestanding columns. I don't find it objectionable or might be unusual, but,
Yeah.
I can see the intent to bring other design elements from the original house into the addition.
Yeah. It's kind of my thinking on it too.
Doesn't
but
really bother me.
It's pretty unusual, and I thought, well, worth discussing. So, and I don't really
I don't have any opinion about it one way or the other.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
that the design looks nice overall, so.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying on that. It doesn't, to me, rise to the level of asking for a change. I think to me at least, they're using high quality materials throughout, which I think sort of doubles in the detailing. If the materials were of a lesser quality or sort of spray foam styled detailing, I might feel differently, but I think the use of quality materials make that
Yep.
fine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a nice craftsman home as it is, so, all right, that's fine. I'll move approval of planning application 19015, design review conditional use permit for a second-story addition at 1054 Nielsen, then.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye. Aye.
Great, so that also passes unanimously. Again, that was item 4-3, 1054 Nielsen Street. And again, just a reminder to you, the project is approved to keep up your story poles for all of those with projects through the appeal period, 14-day appeal period. That now turns us to the last item pulled off the consent calendar, item 4-4, application 19-011, design review for a new duplex at 1051 Keynes Avenue. And since I think there were a couple of us who had some questions, do we want to do Were you guys going to do a brief presentation?
We can do kind of just a quick overview for the commission's
Great.
edification here. So what this is, it's a proposal for a new duplex at 1051 Keynes. Right now, there's a single-family home that's on the property. So as part of the scope, that existing home is proposed to be demolished and the new duplex built. It's going to contain two-bedroom, one-bathroom units. Each unit's approximately 974 square feet. In terms of the architectural design, it's more of a contemporary aesthetic, and has, hardy plank siding, cedar, exterior aluminum bronze windows, and altogether it has building height of 26 feet 7 inches. I know there were some questions about the particular windows that are proposed, and so we're happy to answer other questions you have. I'm sure the applicant is here too and can speak to the design.
Well,
Did you
I guess
want to
I'll weigh in
jam
on some of my comments. I kind of came to terms with the building. I had a bunch of comments, but then after I saw the perspectives, I flipped around, then I walked down Keynes, and I realized the scale. So I'm okay with the building, but I'm looking at the landscape because it was such a hard scape. And a few things that popped in mind was the buildings that were of this size that I was okay with as I walked down the street were mostly screened by large trees. And those that were really in a concrete sea looked really, didn't look so great. And the one, two houses down from it, that big monstrosity was put in at some point. That's kind of an example of what we probably don't want to do. So looking at the planting plan, I noticed they used very small trees in a pretty big, what could be a big planting pit in the front yard, and then they used, they put root tree barrier around those small trees. So I'm not sure why they're trying to dwarf the trees with a large building, so I'm just pushing to get a large tree in a large spot in front of a large building. And then the other comment was the pervious concrete, that's very difficult to pour, and once it is poured, if you do it successfully, you find the contractor to do it's quite expensive. It's very abrasive if you fall down and hurt, and if you have kids riding bikes there, it can be not only expensive, but a little bit rough. So I'm looking at other materials that could be porous, maybe pavers, probably cheaper. Well, it looks like someone's nodding their head, so maybe they can weigh in on that, but that's my experience that the pervious concrete is over the top, but those are my comments, basically.
Okay.
Did you? Yeah, I had a comment as well, which is, I guess it similarly relates to the amount of hardscape in the back in particular. And, we've had a number of projects recently where maybe I've become so used to seeing requests for parking reductions that I found it actually a little surprising to see 4 parking spaces on this site for a 2-unit building, in addition to what appears to be an existing 1-car garage that would remain, although perhaps you can I think that is on this site, but it was a little unclear to me from the plans. I think
It looks like it's on the adjacent
It's on the
parcel.
adjacent property.
okay. The way that it was, okay, that's fine. The way it was
Yeah.
noted on the plans made me think it was on this site as well. But I know that they're allowed to have 2 spaces per unit, and so I wouldn't oppose the project going forward as is. But my comment would just be that I would like to see the applicant consider losing one of those parking spaces and perhaps adding some additional landscaping in the back, or finding a better way to just to create some more permeable surface in the back.
Okay.
So that's all.
Okay.
Just a consideration.
I have a few comments also. No, I agree about the parking. Ironically, right, it's something where people are usually asking for a reduction, and here there's 1 extra. I would prefer to see 1 parking space removed and have a tree planted in the back. You're creating kind of a heat island effect in the back. It's a very hardscape. I just think it's a lot of paving, and the permeable asphalt, I've not really had much experience with it, but it's not the most attractive material that I've seen in photographs. I wouldn't object to them using it, but I don't really like the way it looks. I think permeable pavers would be a much better option. And in fact, I'd rather see more bike parking than, one extra parking spot. I think the reality is that if you have a 2-bedroom apartment, how many bikes would people have? The odds of them having just one bike per apartment is pretty slim. And if they could be, maybe a couple larger spots for cargo bikes or something like that, I think that would be a much better trade-off for the parking spot. The other comment I have is that you have a really great opportunity. I don't know who the architect and applicant are. You have a great opportunity here to make that ground floor unit an accessible unit. If you could go back to the floor plan. From the back, you can pretty much just roll right in off the back. That would be a really, really great opportunity to provide an additional kind of unit for the city. And in fact, to make that whole unit accessible in terms of a larger bathroom, wheelchair accessible, just to provide a different kind of opportunity for people in Albany, I think would be a great option. The bathroom would just have to be a little bit bigger. You just need a 5-foot radius, a 5-foot circle, diameter circle to turn around in, basically, and maybe a slightly larger back door, and you pretty much have an accessible unit. So I think that's a real opportunity for you, for the city to have something more to offer.
Good comment.
The other comment I have, it's kind of going back to the gas versus electric debate in terms of utilities and energy use. In my mind, it really should be encouraged to go all electric. And then, basically then you can offset that with clean energy sources from the City of Albany through their community energy program. And you don't have point source pollution. You can save a lot of money on gas meters, gas piping. If you go to a heat pump type water heater, heat pump type heater, either ductless mini splits, then, with the forced air furnace, you're also have major challenges moving ducts around these kind of apartments. You can save time and space by using ductless mini splits that have cassettes that go, up to 6 zones, 7 zones, something like that. So I would strongly encourage that. And then, we're not that far away from the new California Energy Code, which would require solar panels on the roof. We're only 10 months away from that, basically. So, I'd also encourage you to get ahead of the curve and maybe consider putting renewable energy on the roof, go all electric. You can really get to net zero, especially with the new new construction. You can really make a tight, well-insulated building and, get, Albany moving along towards its climate action plan goals, all that sort of thing. So those are my main comments about this project.
Okay.
Okay. I have
Commissioner
some
Donaldson?
thoughts too. My issues related to parking that I was looking at. I was a little taken aback by the amount of hard space. I don't think I have a problem with them going and asking for 2 parking spaces per unit because Canes is so parked up. And our traffic studies, our parking studies have shown that's one of the reddest streets, the most heavily parked up streets in town. And so I can appreciate the desire to have as much off-street parking as they might want here, I think. So I'm probably okay with that. I had a question about whether there's enough maneuvering room to make those parking spaces really practical. I don't know if a traffic engineer has looked at the turning radiuses going in there. They looked awfully tight to me.
The backup space looked shallow.
The backup space is low, and I'm really not sure how practically speaking, whether those parking spaces have been engineered properly and whether they're going to work. And then my other concern is with the shared driveway. It's effectively shared with the unit next door. And they use that driveway apparently to access their garage in the back. So I think we should condition this project, if it's approved, on getting across easements between these two property owners, so that the other people will have access to their garage, which is where they park.
Same property owner.
Pardon?
Same property owner.
It's the same property owner. Okay. All right. Then I don't know what does the city does. And this comes up later tonight too. Do we force mergers when there's adjoining property owners? I don't think we.
No, not unless it's a substandard lot that is.
Yeah, when it's a standard subdivided lot. So yeah. Okay. Well, I think that then perhaps there should still be cross easements. I don't know. I'd ask to get legal advice on that. But I think that because they aren't necessarily, they could be sold to different people in the future, this time in the future. So I think that this unit appears to have an adequate driveway, to meet the zoning code to get in there, but the unit next door does not. So it would be easy to draw up and record cross easements so that there'd be driveway access to the rear of the next door parcel, which is, I don't remember the number, 1049 or something like that. So, I don't know, that's my comment. So, and I have to say I like a lot of Ian's comments too about this is an opportunity for both for the accessible unit and for a greener unit. I think those are good comments. So.
I have one more comment.
Sure,
I
yeah,
noted,
Commissioner
forgot to
Kent.
mention the decks on the back, the solid screening from bottom to top, I think adds a lot of unnecessary masking to the building, and it's not really a great deck for kids because they can't see anything, and they tend to climb over the top to see, and that's where you get a lot of hazards. So some opening in the deck for kids to see through. If you have a toddler back there, and the highest point is 42 inches, they can't see a thing. They climb on something to look, and then they're over. And so that's a common thing, to put a safety window in there so they can look out.
Just to sort of wrap things up, I did have, I first wanted to say I think this is a good project overall. I think it's a higher and better use of this property. I think a 2-unit rental property being able to add sort of some family-sized rental housing stock into Albany is great. So I really do commend you guys on this project. And overall, I think it is designed really nicely. I think this is a really mixed block architecturally, and it can really handle sort of a different style of architecture being introduced in contemporary. The one note that I wanted to make was just on the windows here. In our original packets, they were shown as aluminum sliders. And I know the standard that we are asked to weigh in on tonight is one of exceptional design here due to the FAR of the project. And I just had some concerns both with, a conflict with the conditions of approval, which do state a 2-inch reveal, and that type of window product just is never going to have a 2-inch reveal. Practically speaking, from the face of the building, you might be lucky to get it from the outside of the trim, but you're never going to get it from the face of the building. And I just, honestly, a sliding aluminum window to me does not sort of assuade excellent design. And so I know the sponsor did come back with some double casements and sort of the window operations, which I think are a dramatic improvement, and I think the operation looks much better. I would personally, in order to sort of get behind this, I would really need to see a higher quality window, and one that truly could have a 2-inch reveal from the face of the building. I don't think vinyl windows and aluminum windows, at least not the aluminum windows that are specified here, rise to that standard. I would be supportive of a variety of different types. I think there are different options out there that could be sourced that would meet that exceptional design standard. So I don't want to prescribe only one material or another. I think there's flexibility with the architectural style here. So whether that's an aluminum clad wood window, a fiberglass clad window, solid wood window, or if you really wanted to go sort of a contemporary design, it's not the most budget conscious, but if the aluminum window was aesthetically what you were going for, I do think there are other brands out there that have a thicker sash and a deeper reveal that we've seen on other projects when they've had that same standard coming forward for exceptional design. that would be more appropriate. So I don't know how specific of a condition you guys would want us to craft, but those would be sort of my thoughts on the project. I'm not sure. I know we've had sort of a divergence of comments and a variety of comments that we've all had. I don't know if somebody wants to, do we need to open this up now for public comment? Have we maybe done enough discussion here? We should turn it over for a presentation.
Yeah, have the applicant respond to any questions, and then.
I think that, I think, yeah, I think
So
that'd
if
be
you would like to have
appropriate.
the project sponsor come on up and give us a presentation or answer any of the questions that we've posed.
Yeah, my name is Jeff Peterson, architect, and basically what I'm hearing is that the windows are an issue, and I did research it, and aluminum, I can't even put aluminum windows in there.
Right.
You know, they're illegal. I can't get the R value.
At least not the brand that you've specified. There absolutely are some high-quality aluminum windows that do, but.
So we went with a Milgard vinyl, bronze. It's a bronze color, and it's got some good depth to it. And I really think that trim, I could even increase the trim depth to get a better reveal, if you like.
So, I mean, for me personally, and I don't know, we're going to have to debate that up here. For me, vinyl windows to me are not a high-quality material and product, so I'm never going to.
Yeah, we're talking
feel
about
that meets the standard.
a rental unit too. We're not talking about a custom residence.
Okay.
We want affordable housing, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish here. So, anyways, the project is what it is. They're almost identical footprints for the two floors, so there's a cost savings there. To increase the bathroom to do an ADA bathroom is going to be disruptive to this. You know, I can research that, but I think what we're going to go with is what we're presenting here. So, is there anything else I need to address? I mean, I thought the drawings were pretty straightforward, and the renderings were giving us a good look at it. So, can you guys go through that?
Well, I think we have some comments that, like, for instance, I mentioned larger trees in the front yard, and.
I don't understand that. Larger
Well,
trees.
now we have
Don't
a-
trees grow?
Well, yeah,
And those trees there's one tree. The others are bushes.
you have two trees shown planted, and they're both
It's a landscape plan, right?
Yeah, I know, that's what I looked at, and they're small trees. Even if they grow to maturity, they're small trees. Not all trees grow big. Some are small trees to begin with, they grow small, or to keep small. So these are crepe myrtles. They're not going to get much bigger than 15 feet.
Well, and would that be out of character with the neighborhood if we had larger trees?
Well, it'd be out of character with other buildings that are of that size. You know, when not out of character, but buildings of that size that have larger trees look better than buildings of that size that have small trees in front of them. I guess.
Yeah, so we've got two trees here that look like they fill up the whole.
Well, those are AutoCAD symbols, so those aren't really trees.
No,
right?
they represent the actual size
Maturity.
at maturity. That's what the landscape architect did.
Okay, well, he's also on his detail, he's showing in this wide open 10 by 10 planter, he's showing root barriers around 2 feet away from the trunk of the tree, I don't know why he's trying to contain the roots in a wide open space like that. So it's a schematic design. I think I'm not sure if, you know, I have to look on the mature size of the crepe myrtle. That looks a little large to me. I know there's big crepe myrtles and small ones, but it is an opportunity for a big tree. So I'm not sure why we don't want to put one in.
Let's put some big trees in there.
Yeah,
Okay? I don't have no problem. You tell me which ones, and we'll do it.
put an elm in there.
Elm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Some of the disease-resistant ones, of course, but yes.
I'll have to run it by my landscape
Yeah,
architect.
he'll know, yeah.
Are there any
Oh,
other?
and in regards to the parking, we could certainly remove that one space in the back there, but that was allowing for some backing into and backing out of that area. So we could indeed, you know, do some sort of landscape element back there to reduce the pervious paving, which I have designated the concrete as pervious. So, and if it's a problem with kids, bare feet with kids, I'm not familiar with that.
Well, have you had experience pouring that, having somebody pour it?
I haven't poured it, no.
I've specified it several times, and every time it comes down to only one contractor will do it, and the price is sky high. And so you better, if you back yourself into that corner, you might get into that situation.
So
Plus
if we did
pavers, you get a lot of,
how about if we did a regular concrete, and then we reduce it, that one space, parking space? Is that acceptable?
well, then you got this sea of, I'd rather go to pervious concrete than just all concrete, yeah. I mean, I'm just giving you a construction tip that that pervious concrete does not go down as well as it's advertised, and that the pavers often come in under budget or cheaper than that. I mean, it's up to you what you do, but I like the pervious nature more than the impervious concrete solution.
Okay.
Are any other questions of the applicant? Okay.
Not anything further, I don't think.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Turn it over to public comment.
Yeah, I don't have any speaker cards, but there may be some members of the audience who.
Is there anyone here to speak on this item?
Oh, can I speak on item in public comment?
This is specific to the project that's before us right
I
now.
was going to suggest just plant a lemon tree.
Ten.
I mean, an elm tree sounds pretty nice, but I would say plant a lemon tree, just a suggestion.
Okay.
Thanks. Great. With that, we'll close public comment and turn it back to the commission.
What to do here? I don't know.
Is this coming forward?
No.
What did you see? What drawings did you see?
I mean, we have a choice. I think we have a choice of, I could either move to approve or move to continue. And
Well, I guess I would turn it to Commissioner McLeod. Did you have any specific amendments to the motion or conditions that you would like to see added as it related to the
Well,
comments that you made?
I think it would be easy enough to eliminate parking space 1B on the site plan. That parking space itself could become planted or used for bike storage or some sort of other use. Maintaining the backup right behind the building. I mean, I don't know if it makes sense to try to mandate that they have an ADA unit at the bottom. It seems maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know what basis we
Overreach,
would have
yeah.
to do that here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it basically just means making the bathroom a little bit bigger and making your mechanical room a little bit narrower. And if you did some other types of equipment, some of that equipment could go outside.
No.
I can see that it can be done. It could easily.
I hear what you're saying, and I really like the ideas. I like the idea of all electric. I like the idea of solar. I like the idea of having an accessible unit on the bottom. I think all of that adds to the cost, and I do agree, and I think the plans show that the applicant here is trying to build apartments that are relatively affordable, and that's the design shows construction techniques that are going to cost less to build than going all out. So I'm of two minds of that, and I'm probably okay with approving the project, recognizing that it's not ideal, but we will get a couple of units of housing that are relatively affordable. So I don't know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with most of that. I mean, I do like your project.
Yeah.
I think it's overall well-designed. The units are well thought out in terms of their plan, and it would be great to have two more two-bedroom units available. So I think that's great. I mean, I'm not really going to try to mandate that they do any of these things. I mean, it's mostly suggestion. It's the power of suggestion, and I mean, the only thing I would maybe say as a condition would be maintain pervious paving of whatever kind. I would not want to see it all concrete. I mean, if they came back with pervious pavers, with the gravel layer underneath that can absorb the runoff and the water, I think that would be great. I've never had experience with the pervious asphalt, although I do understand it's difficult to pour, and I do understand that it kind of clogs up fairly quickly, thereby not lasting very long with its intended effect.
It's pervious concrete, not pervious asphalt.
Pervious asphalt, yeah, pervious
It's
asphalt.
pervious concrete.
Pervious concrete.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, I've heard that that's, it also clogs up fairly.
That's right. They get a vacuum it every few years, right?
Yeah. But as long as they maintain a pervious surface of some kind, I'm fine with that.
And, to drill down on that a little bit, the pervious, so when you say it's pervious paving, are there any stormwater issues here? Does it really need to be technically pervious? Does it have to be like a self-treating surface?
No, it's encouraged, but the parcel size is not at the
Okay, so it
threshold.
doesn't trigger
where
any
we
kind of,
get
all
them
right,
to
so
see
just
that.
a nice feature. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I will just offer that I would be inclined to support approving the project tonight with the condition to work with the landscape architect to identify a bigger tree type for the front, to try to maximize the pervious surface in the backyard, although I don't think we have a clear consensus on what that means, but in order to be super prescriptive about it, but please take that into consideration. And otherwise, I would just encourage you to, listen to some of the other comments that you've heard tonight and try to incorporate what you can while recognizing that there are cost implications for some of these design issues. So that's where I'm coming out on this. I don't think that the things we're talking about rise to the level of warranting a continuance for a project like this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we are all in support of the project generally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I would recommend. And maybe, unless anyone has comments, I will just go ahead and make that as a motion.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I guess I would just,
I have one more little comment. So it was mentioned affordable, but this isn't really affordable. It's just
not below
cost-effective.
market, but it's
gonna be,
cost-effective.
you're going to be renting them out at market rate, right? So affordable, when you say affordable, you mean you don't want it to cost too much, but
Yeah.
but your rent's going to be what it's going to be. So let's not get lulled
It's
into
not
that.
subsidized.
But, I mean, affordable doesn't, it's not below market rate. We can
No.
say that for sure.
Yeah, that's right.
right, I was just going to echo that. This is a market rate rental project,
Yeah,
and I think that's great to bring rental units. Rental units are inherently more accessible to a wider population than ownership, but I also think the standard that's before us is not varied based on the tenure of the project. It's, we don't have a lower design standard for our rental housing stock in this city. And I think if we're holding people who are doing their, forever dream home, but also trigger the, FAR trigger for exceptional design to a certain design standard, we should be holding everyone to that same standard. I don't think we should have a lower bar. And I think these have been some sort of comments that we've been applying to other projects when they've come in, where we've said, vinyl windows are not, meeting that standard of exceptional design. So I would agree with Commissioner Jennings on sort of the comments of moving it forward with, asking them to work with a landscape architect to have a larger tree at the front. Unless there's strong opinions, I'm not opposed to leaving that open of the exact species, so long as maybe you could give some parameters of growth potential.
Don't lock the guy to your landscape architect into a species, just large tree, something that's maybe 40 feet plus at maturity. How's that?
Great.
40 feet?
40 foot tall?
At maturity, yeah.
maturity.
That's not difficult.
And then seeking increased permeability and landscaping within the rear yard area, sort of where that greater parking area is, and whether that's through removing a parking space or just doing some other surface treatment and increased landscaping. And then thirdly, replacing or having the windows to meet the conditions of approval and to specify them as casements of either fiberglass wood or an aluminum clad material. Is that kind of summarizing the
That seems fine.
Consensus?
I'll just say I'm outing myself here, but I honestly don't even know what those window terms mean. So I'll say yes, because I know you care a lot about this and you have good design sense. But to be clear, I also don't think we should hold projects to lower standards, and that's not what I'm saying. It's that I look at this and, for me as a non-architect, non-design professional, I think it meets the overall design criteria that we set. But again, I know you have a very good eye for this, so I defer to your judgment on the window stuff. Great. So
We will make a motion? or-
Well, I agree with the comments about windows Commissioner Waddy's made. Vinyl windows don't necessarily look that great. Oftentimes, the glass plane is way too far forward, and the material doesn't really last very well. It doesn't age very well. So I think, you can do aluminum windows, but you get into really, really high-end, very expensive aluminum windows, which they are out there with thermal breaks. The law that says you can't use aluminum windows is usually having to do with thermal breaks in the windows. And Milgard does make one, but I don't know if that has the right glass kind of setback. So I think if they meet the glass setback with a better window, that would be great.
Okay.
Do you want to make a motion?
Elizabeth,
Yes.
was that a motion? Were you making a
yeah,
motion?
if you,
Sure, I'm happy to make that motion
Okay.
then. So let me go back to the agenda language here. So a motion to approve, sorry, I just moved my, it's working online. Move to approve item 4-4, application 19-011, new design review for a new duplex at 1051 Keynes Avenue with the following additional conditions, including the trees at the front yard to be specified at maturity to be at least 40 feet in height, to increase or to ensure permeable surfaces and increase landscaping within the rear yard, and to have the windows specified as casements of either fiberglass wood or an aluminum-clad wood window with at least the minimum 2-inch recess from the face of the wall, not trim.
Okay, I'll second.
That, with a second? All in favor?
aye.
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 Any opposed?
Okay.
No? Okay, great.
Opposed, okay.
That item is approved, and again, please keep up the story polls through the 14-day appeal period. Great. With that, we will move on now to item 5 on the agenda, which is general public comment. This is for persons desiring to address the commission on an item that's not on the agenda, and you are limited to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone here for general public comment?
Yes, we have 2 speaker cards. So Jeremiah and Jerry Holen.
Hi, good evening, council, or commission. Planning and zoning is the name of the commission, right? I was wondering when you're planning to create a school zone, I think it could be a good idea for the city to create school zones, an area that our schools are already in, and just call it a zone. Then 1,000 feet, and there's already the state law. Within 1,000 feet, no drugs, no guns, no alcohol, no tobacco. But there isn't an automatic slower speed limit. Right now it's 25. I know every other city in the entire Bay Area, every city, it's maybe 15 miles per hour around schools. In some cities, it's just, not all the time. It's like drop off in the morning and pick up in the afternoon kind of thing. So yeah, zoning is such an interesting word. I can't even use it in a sentence. I haven't thought about it too much, but it seems like a hard word to use in a sentence, zoning. I think I was out zoning yesterday. I don't know. And maybe that's what you guys do. So I'm just curious. I've been working on this for about 10 years now, school zones. The superintendent, school district, they don't even know what school zones are. They think it's if you live in this part of Albany, you go to this school, there's like a map. It's all color-coded and everything, school zones. But that's not the real thing. That's not what school zones are. It's very misleading to the public calling those school zones. School zones is a much bigger issue. If all we do is create school zones, put the words in our municipal code book, the state will give us a grant to pay for 10 crossing guards plus $100,000 every year for public works to repaint the crosswalks, to put up signs, to pay for all that. You get a grant from the state, but you have to adopt it yourself. the whole entire state of California has state laws, and then every city has to adopt certain things on their own. That's what makes them unique. So we just need to update our city. We just need to do it ourselves, get school zones in there. It's been 10 years. I was just wondering when you're planning on doing it, you know? It's for the kids. And Albany's all about schools, and I watched the meeting last night, and that lady made a public comment. I didn't know all that was going down in our city, but we really need to keep our schools number one.
Thank you.
Hello there. Thank you for your time tonight, Commissioners. I'm here to talk on a couple little topics. We now have an Albany Architectural Heritage Association in town, and we have nominated the McGregor Building for the National Register, and we would encourage the commission to write a letter in support of that nomination, either as a commission or as individuals, and if you are at all interested, please contact me and I'll get you the information, the nomination, as well as the state historian who is reviewing the nomination. The main reason I'm here tonight is to request from the Albany Architectural Heritage Association that the Zoning Commission maybe look at doing or studying adopting some kind of a historic ordinance or policy for the city of Albany. We don't really have any kind of policy or regulation for historic buildings, and it has we've seen the weaknesses of not having guidelines for the commissioners as well as for staff, and I think it would be a pretty good idea for Albany to start considering a historic ordinance. Most other cities, in fact, I think all of them have some kind of historic ordinance, and what I would suggest is that the Zoning Commission just form a little study group and look at what different cities do and see if anything can be adapted to Albany. I think it would benefit the city tremendously. We do have some historic buildings, not a lot, but enough that would qualify for some landmarking, and I think that would be a very important thing for us to do. The other important point about this is that the state of California considers any building over 50 years old a potential historic district. So really just about every building you're analyzing is a potential historic resource, not district, I'm sorry, resource. And so are your decisions in compliance with CEQA? Is it in fact a historic resource? And I think I heard there was a demolition tonight. Was that an older building? Did somebody take a look at that to make sure there wasn't some significance to it? And I think we do have a lot of important structures. We do have a character in this town that is very distinct, and I think that would be something that would be wise to preserve. And so that's all I have to say. We'll follow up with a letter requesting a formal study if you can, and we would be glad to offer our professional assistance if necessary or if needed. Lastly, I can't stay for the meeting, but I wanted to say I do support the project at 825 Carmel. I live at 833 Carmel, and I think it would be a benefit for our neighborhood. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, then we are moving on to Section 6 of the agenda, discussion and possible action on items on the regular calendar. So first up is item 6-1, application 19-014, design review and conditional use for an addition at 1146 Evelyn.
Yes, good evening, everyone. This is design review and conditional use permit for a project at 1146 Evelyn. I'll give a quick presentation and answer questions at the end. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 6,445 square foot lot with a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,566 square foot house built in 1950. City records show minor repair work done to the home, including installation of wood-burning stove, a re-roof, gas water heater installation, window replacements, and water line replacement. Excuse me. And here's the street view of the property as it looks today. Project request. The applicant is seeking design review for a 2-level addition to the main dwelling. They're also seeking a conditional use permit to vertically extend the existing non-conforming walls located in the required creek setback area. This, should it be approved, this project would result in a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 3,082 square foot home with a maximum height of 27 feet and 6 inches. And here's an existing elevation of the home. And here's the proposed elevation. Then a 3D render of the home. Proposed project scope. The first a 578 square foot addition is proposed at the ground floor, and a remodel which would include reconfiguration of the interior space to have the kitchen, dining, living room, guest room, bedroom, bathroom, laundry room, and garage on the ground floor. A 115 square foot addition is second story addition is proposed to the main dwelling, which would accommodate 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Not under the commission review, but provided for informational purposes, is also a 650 square foot accessory dwelling unit that's proposed at the second story of the home. This unit would accommodate a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom living unit. And this would result in an FAR increase from 24.3% to 48%, which triggers the exceptional design review, exceptional design requirement. Any projects exceeding a 0.45 FAR are subject to exceptional design as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. These exceptional design treatments include contrasting exterior cladding materials, a new garage door, a new entry door, an atrium in the dining area, a green roof, a covered porch, solar panels, and a cantilevered second story. Conditional use permit. The subject parcel is located in the R1 zoning district with the watercourse overlay. Properties located in the watercourse overlay district are required to have a 20-foot setback from the top of Natural Creek per the zoning code. A conditional use permit is required to vertically extend both the south and a portion of the east walls located approximately 15 feet from the property line. A portion of the second story is also proposed to cantilever over the required setback area. And then this is just the code excerpt regarding watercourse overlay districts. The watercourse overlay district regulations date back to at least 1978, where they existed with the same language contained in the code. The Albany Creek Restoration Report also dates back to at least 1978. Staff was not able to locate a copy of this document, unfortunately. The project is required to comply with FEMA requirements for flood zones. In other similar projects, the city requires submittal of a flood elevation certificate prepared and stamped by a licensed civil engineer as well. And this is just a snapshot of the APN map for this property. And then this is a supplemental exhibit provided by the project architect. This shows the first floor, and the orange arrow indicates the 20-foot creek setback. So that's the first floor, and then this one shows the second floor with the portion of it cantilevering over the setback area. Parking. There are a total of 2 off-street parking spaces provided on the subject property. 1 space is located in the existing attached garage, and 1 is located on a detached open parking pad. No additional off-street parking spaces are triggered with this project scope. The subject property is 0.2 miles from a bus stop on Gilman and Santa Fe, therefore no additional parking is required for the ADU per state law. Staff has received 1 correspondence regarding concerns over the proximity of the home to the creek and as well as the overall size of the proposed building. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA, and staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the findings and conditions of approval. And we're happy to answer any questions.
The applicant is also here tonight, and I think he has some clarifying information to share with you regarding the creek setback.
Okay.
Are there any questions of staff before we turn it over to the project sponsor?
Not right now. Well, actually, I do. Do you have a slide of the FEMA map that's at this location? No.
Unfortunately, we don't have it right now.
Don't have that. Okay. All right.
So I have a question, or maybe more than one question, but with respect to the setbacks, so I understand there's the creek overlay setback, but there's also a 15-foot front setback. And the plans show the existing building as non-conforming with respect to the front setback, the 15-foot setback. And the plans, as I read them, also show the proposed addition increasing the encroachment into the front setback, both vertically and horizontally, beyond what's there right now. And so I'm curious, because as I read this, like we weren't being asked to approve a vertical or horizontal extension of the wall that encroaches into the 15-foot front setback. And I'm a little concerned that that may have been overlooked in the preparation of this. And so I'm curious if staff did look at this and come to a conclusion that this wasn't an issue, because
Yeah, we can clarify with the project architect too, but if you look at this portion of the map, this line here denotes the 15-foot setback, whereas this second blue line,
when you say this line,
I'm sorry.
There's a cursor there.
No, it's kind of hard to see on here, but there's two lines here. There's essentially one right here where the orange yellow is pointing at, which is the 20-foot creek setback. And then just before it is the 15-foot
Right.
setback.
Can I come over and show you what I know
Yeah.
that this is not like a great way to do this, and I was hoping to talk to you before, but, okay, so this is the existing. This shows the 15-foot front setback, and it shows that the wall is non-conforming.
Yeah.
For the existing. And then the new, it would extend it up.
Yes, correct.
And it would extend it out into the 15-foot setback, not just the 20-foot setback, also the 15-foot. And it increases, you see this triangle is bigger than it is here. We've had so much discussion about non-conforming setbacks and the extension of walls into those, that I was like really, really concerned that this goes in a different direction than what we've been talking about. So, you see what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
We can
Okay, yeah.
as well.
Do you have more questions?
I think that's the big one. Let me just sorry, one sec. Oh, yeah, my other question was with respect to the 20-foot, the creek setback. So thank you for mentioning that you couldn't find the document, because I was wondering what that report
Yeah.
recommended. So it seems like maybe that's outdated language in the code that
Yeah,
needs to be
we did a
revisited.
little research, so we actually have the 1978 code here tonight. And it was referenced at that time. I would venture to guess that that document is woefully out of date, even if we could find it, just given how much stricter FEMA is with construction in flood zone areas and just our own standards as well.
Right, okay. But I guess what I was curious about was, does staff think we need to make separate findings on a conditional use permit for that encroachment? Or do you think it's just?
We can expand upon them, but in terms of actual, the findings language, it's the same general language from the conditional use permit section of the code.
Okay, thanks.
Did you have some additional questions?
Yeah, I have some questions. I guess I've been struggling with, when I'm reviewing this project. Can you pull up the slide with the water course overlay language? So, and I guess I've been trying to work with staff on figuring this out. But basically, it says where is the setback language?
So we don't actually have that contained within a slide,
Yeah.
but we can.
Yeah, well, I know it says it's
Leave it in the
supposed to be
staff report.
20 feet from the top of the.
The top of the natural creek bank, yeah.
Top of the natural creek bank. And I have been struggling like crazy to figure out where the top of the natural creek bank is on the property.
Yeah.
And I've been asking for,
Yeah, this is something we're going to
guidance
have
with
the
this.
applicant clarify as part of their presentation. They went out to the site today and did some additional preparation and
Yeah.
materials to share with
and
you.
it also, I mean, in reviewing the materials, I'm a little disappointed there wasn't a topographic site survey done.
Right, I agree.
Because then we could have had contours, or, the creek could have been mapped out very objectively.
Right.
Location of the culvert. I can't really tell on the plans where the culvert is, so I'd like to see that. And I guess my big concern for the creek setback is that it looks to me like if you go to page A2.2, that the creek setback is noted as 20 feet from the property line. And as far as I understand, the property line is the center line of creek.
Yeah.
And that is not going to be the same as top of the bank. So I'm really struggling just to find out where these different lines are and how that affects the project. So, I mean, that's definitely something I would like to know about. So that's my basic question.
Commissioner Donaldson, did you have some follow-up questions or?
No, I don't have any questions right now. I think I'd like to hear what the applicant has to say, and then I'll probably have other comments later, but yeah.
I just had one very quick question of staff. As it relates to the FAR that's being proposed, are ADUs, are the square footages associated with the ADUs excluded from the FAR calculations or
No.
part of the total building volume counted for FAR purposes?
They're included in the building.
They're included. They're included.
So at some level, there still is a discretionary component because if, for example, if the design was reduced because we felt the FAR was too high, it could inherently impact the ADU
Right.
in that sense,
Yeah.
but the actual approval of the second unit is not what's under our jurisdiction, right?
Right. So I think in this case, you're looking at the review of the building exterior.
Got
So
it.
you could have changes to that, but yeah, in terms of the interior programming, that's under the
Okay.
ministerial review.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Great. So with that, why don't we turn it over to the project applicant to give the presentation of the project?
Good evening. My name is Antonio Lau, my partner here, Eva Chiu. So we have prepared some supplemental material based upon some observations that I personally went out this morning to the site and took some more precise measurements as to the location of the bank, of the natural bank, and it's probably a good time to do it now because it's actually full of water now at this time of the year. So I took some pictures of the actual, we only have one set of this, so you have to pass it along, but we do have 5-sheet of drawing with an extra line.
Well, I don't know. It's like just,
Really pass them.
okay.
And I can go over all those lines.
Thank you.
I guess that's the neighbor.
Okay.
Right, yeah, a lot of vegetation, you can't quite, well, I mean, it doesn't,
Oh, yes.
I mean,
Yeah. Go ahead.
Share? Or go ahead, share.
Can project it out, unfortunately. Okay, so if you look at the plan that we are provided, we have added this very heavy blue line in between the other ones that we have previously indicated on the plan that you have seen on the set that was presented.
You also added the creek bank line as you've made some rough measurements, right?
Yeah, so the creek natural bank, which actually where the water is actually running up to, and you can tell by just the changing of the vegetation, the root system, and the actual bedrock where the water is running, it's approximately 6 feet wide that I measure out from the property, adjacent property, and the bank of the creek. So from that point, we took 20-foot setback, and we drew this additional line that you see here, in the sort of heavy dotted line. The other lines represent, the first one, the very bottom one, a 15-foot setback from the property line, a 20-foot setback from the property line that you saw in the earlier presentation. And then the other two red lines represent 25 and 30 feet from the property line. The reason we indicated that, because as a way of referencing the ordinance of the development on the creek, we also look at the Berkeley Creek ordinance. You know, this creek is Coronis's Creek, and the other side is actually Berkeley. So the creek ordinance, according to the Berkeley Municipal Code, establishes that developments within creek zone are limited to 30 feet from the center line of the creek, or the property line, or the center line of the creek in that case. And then with a conditional use permit, they can go up to 25 feet. And then at the point when the creek culverts, the development are allowed to encroach up to 15 feet within the center line of that creek. Now, subject to, of course, the impact that the building might have upon the earth that is actually supporting the creek, the construction of the culvert, and so on and so forth. So it's a question of sort of engineering, making sure that there's not a pile foundation going right down in that location. Though. So would bring me to the cantilever and the encroachment that we have been talking a little earlier about. And in order to clarify some of the issues in here, the footprint actually of the existing building that is non-conforming, which means is non-conforming, is 14.86 feet as opposed to 15 feet encroachment. Also, in the original one, also includes a portion of a stair that goes up to what is now the second floor of the building. And the corner of the original building, the building that is actually there, it is actually here. I know that it's easy to get confused and assume that this is the original corner of the building, but it's actually there. So in our design, we actually have reduced the frontage of the building, of the non-encroaching portion of it, to actually be closer to the actual 15-foot line that runs in that direction. So the portion of the ground floor of the building, we have actually reduced it. And then we have kept the second story portion of our building to still meet the corner of the building that is existing and being proposed. So yes, it is true that there is some degree of encroachment, but the actual encroachment within the 15-foot setback is this little triangle there, right? That it is between this point, the building runs in this direction, and this 15-foot setback in there. But then that's something that we're also taking out this entire construction of this stair that is there. We thought that we're actually mitigating that situation rather than actually exacerbating it. Let's see, in addition to that, so, we have, in the design, there's a large tree in there that is indicated in the plan, the large walnut tree that we're trying to keep as part of the design. I think it's a very nice feature of the design. We try to angle the building so that it minimizes the footprint towards the back of the building, creating still some view corridor for the neighbor that is immediately behind, orienting our building not directly in front of the other building, but actually as the building moves back towards the back of the lot, actually the footprint sort of gets reduced at the same time. So, I mean, if you have additional questions on the design, I'll be glad to answer them as well.
I guess I just had a quick question just to clarify to make sure I'm understanding. So basically what you're saying is the existing building is 2 stories and is non-conforming, encroaching at both stories into the front setback.
Yes.
In the proposal, the ground floor, you're reducing it, the nonconformity at some level.
Right.
But at the second floor, you are further encroaching into the front setback.
It's just to meet the corner.
Right.
So there's not a.
No, yeah,
Thing, yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay, but that's just to clarify. So there's a further encroachment at the second story, but there's a lesser encroachment at the ground floor.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Great, thanks.
But on the second floor, I just want to be crystal clear about this because again, we've had a lot of conversations in the last 6 months about non-conforming setbacks, and I've been on the side of we should kind of liberalize the rules so that we should be able to make findings. But I'm just a little concerned because I think this goes beyond even what we were talking about. Because I see not just that you're building, what we were presented with didn't mention a front yard non-conforming setback at all. So that's a process issue. But the thing I'm concerned about is that you're building a whole new wall at an angle that is non-conforming. So it's not just that you're meeting the corner, you're building the wall that goes kind of down from northeast towards southwest.
This one you're referring to.
Yeah, that's a whole,
Did you go to the second floor plan? Is that okay? Is there one here?
Yeah, the previous plan were actually shown because the previous image, so.
There.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, there. No, sorry, you're right. That's
There you have
existing. Oh, that's first floor.
Right there.
Yeah.
So the original corner of the building is this one here.
Right.
So the only portion that is of this wall that is not conforming would be this little triangle here. From this point over there.
Right, but it's a new, yeah, it's new, it's like a new wall that you're building that's not just an extension of an existing vertical or horizontal wall, right?
Right, but it's within the setback.
Yeah, but-
The majority of that wall is
Right,
actually
so-
within, but it is that
Right,
one
so-
portion where we're connecting to the existing that we would kind of push.
So the portion of the wall that is conforming is this wall. The portion of the wall that is not conforming is that wall.
Right.
The portion of the area that is not conforming is this triangle here.
Because the existing goes straight past.
Right,
it.
so the existing essentially does.
Okay.
There's many layers to it.
So part of, if I can may add, so part of the rationale of retiring that setback further into it had to do with actually that culvert in there and cantilever in the second floor. So the footprint of the ground floor level is actually set back as far as we can from what we suspect is the direction of that culvert of the creek underneath.
Any other questions of the project applicant?
When the lines that you show on your plans for the 20-foot creek setback, you measured that from the center line of the creek, from where the water is now? Is
On
that-
this presentation,
Yes.
right, so that I went today and actually
And so the one you showed us today, so
Has
the dark blue line
dark blue
then
line, yes.
is, and that is what? That's
It's 20
top of bank then?
from the natural bank of the creek,
From the existing bank?
existing bank,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
If I may, that's from the water's edge?
From the water's edge.
Water's edge.
From the water's edge.
I mean, still have a definition.
It's not top of bank, that's water's
Potential
edge. So
definition.
from the water's edge, okay.
Yes, but so it appears that the natural bank of the creek, and I'm not a scientist to determine that, is located at that location, given sort of the changing of the topography there from actually how the water run off.
I think I read on your survey that it says that there's a wooden retaining wall along the creek there,
So,
of wooden beams. I think I
So
see that,
the-
or it's
it's not
buried
really-
under all the ivy and everything, but.
right, so there are a number of pieces of retaining wall that are not
Yeah.
retaining the creek, but it's actually retaining about 3-foot section of the flat part of the building from then the natural slope that goes into the creek.
Yeah.
So in the picture that I've also shown, the structure, the house that is immediately on the other side of the creek, in fact, almost like on top of the creek, you see relatively the level of the habitable space in there, substantially below
Yeah.
actually the actual plateau, let's say, that we have there.
Yeah, okay.
Part of the reason that we try to refer to the Berkeley Creek ordinance, just for equivalence, because it's kind of a little.
Right, I mean, so
ambiguous,
that-
To kind of understand what's kind of generally,
Acceptable, yeah.
Acceptable setbacks from the creek. So you'll see that the majority of the addition really is not an issue, right? So it's a question, I guess, of that corner.
I have just a couple questions
Yes.
while you're up here. One is, so I noticed that the projection for the skylight seems quite a bit higher than the rest of the
Yes.
building. And I'm curious if that was a design choice or if there's some kind of structural reason it needs to be.
No, it's entirely a design choice. I mean, it's something that we, a designer, have done in the past. We think it's a great source of natural light, creating this sort of almost like chimney with a lot of reflected light.
Because that's the north side on that side, so there's not.
Right, so the skylight facing south, and it,
Right, but I guess, I mean, in terms of, like, could it be flush with the roof and still provide that light? Could it be half that height and provide that much light, or does what I'm asking is the
right.
actual projection.
I mean, if it's flush with the roof, certainly not, because the roof is sloped north facing. If it's halfway, certainly can. I mean, I don't have a photometric study of that. I mean, I know that for this particular site, in which we actually have one ourselves, we are seeing that over the years, they have provided actually a very good and nice quality of light to the space below. But of course, it's not scientifically proven that that site will work as opposed to something that it is 50% smaller, right? So it's certainly a variable that can be accommodated if it requires to be, yes.
And then just one other thing I'm hoping you can speak to as the architects. So, one of the findings that we're supposed to make about general plan consistency is, for second-story additions to, that they're designed to minimize the increases in height and bulk as, perceived from the street.
Yeah.
And it does seem to me that from what I've seen, and I didn't visit the site, but I did the Google Earth tour, it does seem like this is going to be quite a bit bigger than the existing building and quite a bit bigger than the surrounding homes. And so I'm just curious from a design perspective, if you can talk to anything that you did to help kind of minimize the appearance of bulk.
Yeah, so the first thing is that we got rid of that big stair. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a very large stair that is built in there that goes up to the second floor, which is a concrete stair with a completely solid floor. The second thing, and that might just be a reason of a consequence of the setback, is that the building is actually, so you approach it from the north side of Evelyn, you won't even see the addition because it actually turns back towards following the contours of the side property. The third thing is that we wanted to reduce the bulk of the building by cantilevering that portion, creating actually a porch entry to the building, making it a little more welcome than having just the door facing to the front. The other thing, as you turn around the building sort of angles back towards the back of the building, giving room for actually two very nice trees that are actually on the side, a very large walnut tree on the back, and then one that is sitting on top of the deck that I'm not aware what species are, but it has a very, very, very large canopy that is actually quite a feature of the site that we want to actually preserve by minimizing the footprint actually on the back and trying to balance those two things, adding some more presence of the building on the street while at the same time not having to add more bulk.
I also think that even though the property line itself cuts in, if the actual street will continue running smooth. So the reality is that angle is also set back from the street further, and then the fact that it's angled, actually there's a kind of perspective view, that angle also diminishes the mass versus if it were something parallel to the street, then that would kind of be confronting you. So it actually helps diminish the massing in the back by having that angle.
Thank you.
Sure.
I was just going to ask about the green roof. I mean, it just seems kind of small. And so I guess why so small, or why?
Well, it turns out that architectural, conceptually at least, there is a two-story space below, and the green roof is actually almost identical in size to the deck that is actually sitting on the landscape. So for us, it was a way to almost like a bit of a transplant of that deck into the roof. Of course, conceptually, that's how we arrived at that particular size. Now, whether that...
I think there's also some budget considerations. It'd be lovely if we could afford more, the green roof, but I think we're working on a budget, and so, but the client is very interested in promoting green roof and sustainable features as much as possible in the house, so it's kind of what we feel is viable, really, kind of considering the budget, hopefully.
Yeah.
But it's, well, how would I say? Yeah, it's fairly small. It's not meant to be accessed. It's not meant to be used.
Right.
Sitting area or anything like that, so...
I think part of the green roof initiative is really around kind of the heat and reflectivity of the hard surface there.
Yeah.
So even though it's not like plantable per se, they're not necessarily going to grow vegetables up there, it does still help kind of thermally with the overall.
Right. I mean, I think the implication of having a habitable space up there, both in the cost of the engineering, just the cold issues that will begin to kick in once you have to have somebody out there who render the project actually untenable at some point. I mean, and then there's some solar panels next to it. in the one corridor of sunlight that we actually have between the two trees.
Will be accommodating.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, I was wondering about the shading there, because you won't get a full day's worth of.
yeah, so
sun,
the tree with a large canopy by the creek is actually relatively low, but the walnut tree is actually,
Yeah, well, I guess you'll have to see with your energy consultant or solar provider whether it's actually worth it, because, you may not get enough production out of them to really
Right.
justify it. But anyway, I like the intention, but may not be so effective. But anyway.
Any
I don't
oth-
have any other questions.
Any other questions of the?
No, I don't think so, not right now.
Okay.
No.
Great, thank you. And with that, we'll turn it over to public comment. Any speaker cards?
I don't have any speaker cards, but we obviously have some speakers, so if you want to come up and state your name for the record, you can fill out a speaker card later.
No problem.
Hi, my name's Lisa, and I live, my husband and I live at 1144 Evelyn, and we just have some questions and want to gain further understanding of several things, including the actual construction or deconstruction. We're not sure if the existing house is going to be taken down completely or if portions of it are going to be left. But regardless, because the property line is so very narrow between 1144 and 1146, I assume there's, potentially going to be some loud noise if there's asbestos in the existing house. There's potentially safety issues, especially if it's sandblasted or even taken down. And has there been thought given to some sort of temporary sound and safety barrier between the properties? There's a narrow sidewalk that leads from our front porch and around the house into our backyard, and it's our only way of entering the backyard. And the existing house at 1146 is very close to that walkway. So further clarity on those things would be, something that we would welcome. One of us has issues with asthma. So anyway, so that's one thing. And then I do have another question, but I don't know how this works. So should I?
Sure, continue with all of your questions. And
Okay. Okay. So the only other question really that we have is just we would like a better understanding of the proposed height of the roof of the new structure compared to what it is right now, because assuming that it is higher, it's going to possibly affect light, possibly affect our ability to use our backyard without looking straight up into the neighbor's house. But, I'm not an architect, so in all of these pictures, which have been very helpful, what I'm not seeing and what I would like to see is more of a contrast between our house and this new structure on the north side of that structure's property. That's it.
What was your address again? What was your?
1144
1144, okay, thank you.
Evelyn.
Yeah, next door.
You're the immediate next door neighbor to the north.
Yes, correct.
And then there's another very narrow gap between the house.
That
after
is,
yours.
yes, that is absolutely true.
Okay.
Sorry, before you go, are there story poles up right now? There are, okay.
Are there what?
Story poles, so I was asking because
see
they
'em.
should have the poles up that at least show you the the outline of where the building is going to be. So to
Oh.
the extent you're asking about
Where
height,
would we see those?
yeah, they
Sorry?
should, I mean, they should
There should be wood on top of the roof that's sticking up to illustrate the building height.
Okay.
So, yeah, take a look, because
Okay.
that will give you like a
They're
real
certainly,
life.
they're certainly visible on the other side of you. I know I could see them in the field.
Okay.
There are little flags on them, just poles with flags on them that show
Okay,
the outline.
all right.
Yeah.
We'll
And
do-
it looks to me like from the plans, it'll be 4 feet higher than the
4
existing.
feet higher than the existing. All
Along that side. Mhm,
Okay.
Yeah.
right, thank you.
Hi, I'm sorry I didn't fill out a card. I'm her husband, Will. We live next door. Always nice to get new neighbors, and just want to do the due diligence that you want to do in these cases. I was listening to the architect and repeating how he's not a scientist, and I was just wondering if there could be some kind of independent study about the encroachment on the creek to make sure that things are not going to be compromised more than they already are. That's one thing. And there's the side of the house next to ours, there's a very narrow space there. And we weren't able to see, maybe I could be pointed to it more clearly, but through the plans, what the difference is going to be with the new structure, given especially that part of the new structure is going to be rental property, and the approach to the rental property is going to go down that same walkway that we share. And I mean, I'm sure that could be cleared up, but I just wanted to get up here and bring those things up. And I second my wife's hope that during the construction, there's some kind of wall to protect us from the noise and the dust and so forth. We have breathing issues in the family, and so that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
I live on the other side, so I'm mostly affected by the size of the addition. And I did see a comment. I do agree that it is a little large for the location. They're more than doubling the house. And it's going to definitely affect what I look out on when I look out my bedroom. So I feel for that, for the size. And also, I agree with the noise issue. And how long is the construction supposed to take? Does anybody know? A year?
No.
Yeah. If there's any way to.
Hard to know. It's hard to know. Yeah.
It's quite close.
It's really hard to know.
Pardon?
It's really hard to know on
Hard to know.
something like that.
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Louise Snitz, and my husband isn't with me, but we're directly on the other side of the creek.
You're on the other side of the creek then.
Yeah, I'm in
Okay.
Berkeley.
I get it.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So,
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
oh, I have a question about the FAR and what does that terminology mean that?
Oh, sure. The question that I had, it's floor area ratio. So it's the relationship between how much square footage there is in the building relative to the size of the lot, the size of the
Yeah.
piece of property.
So that's part of the
So it's part of the,
section that they're getting.
correct. Or part of the review. Any other members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and turn it back to the commissioners. And I'm just wondering, before we do public comment, just given some of the questions from the public, would staff maybe be able to talk a little bit about what's typical construction process or conditions around sort of the asbestos question and all of those kinds of
I'd be happy to. So We have general conditions of approval that regulate both the construction hours, building permit review, and additional procedures that are necessary to mitigate impacts. So on the asbestos, as an example, there are actually federal requirements for how that gets contained and disposed of. So the applicant would absolutely have to follow those regulations in terms of how they handle that as part of the construction. In terms of the construction duration period, it's kind of hard to say, but I think, it could be anywhere from, 6 months to 12 months, just depending on the pace at which the construction crew proceeds.
Great. So hopefully that answered some of the members of the public's questions about the construction process.
The sound barrier, or, just debris, or not debris, but dust, because they're, again,
Yeah.
we're in that house right there with the arch, and literally you can't see it because the tree is kind of blocking it, but the property line is really close.
Sure.
So we do have dust control provisions as a condition of approval, so the applicant is required to contain as much of that as possible, and again, to have minimal impacts to adjacent properties.
And would that require or involve a movable fence? Because I've seen.
Yeah, there can definitely be a temporary fence that goes up, but I think what you're asking would actually go a little bit further. If you're concerned about the dust, it would actually potentially include tenting so that you really don't have the impacts. They're contained within the tent.
And I think it's just important for the public to know that, we're reviewing right now certain aspects of the project, and once it gets through the Planning Commission, there is additional review that happens by
our building division.
By the building division that takes care of some of those more technical, how you do the construction. So that's not necessarily part of our purview, just for the public's knowledge. So with that, do any commissioners have any thoughts, want to start off?
Where to start?
I can start, I guess. I have a bunch of comments.
Sure, Commissioner Kent.
I guess I'm of two minds here on this thing, and I have a bunch of comments. But the setbacks, I look at the reason why we have the setbacks and how it applies here. Obviously, the setback for the creek is to protect the nature of the creek and protect the wildlife and protect from flooding. But when you're setting back from a culvert, it seems to be kind of a moot point. So I'm not that worried about this encroachment over a culverted filled area. In addition, the front yard setback is to, give some presence to the street, and the houses are lined up. And what we have here is a really strangely shaped lot, and we're asking to set back, really not from the front yard, but from another property line. So they're setting back from unless I'm understanding this incorrectly, their setback from the property line is not really a frontage setback, it's a property. Where it takes the angle, we're setting back from somebody's property line, we're not setting back from the frontage.
So you're almost more of a side setback rather than a front setback.
It is. As soon as that other property kicks in, it's a side yard setback. So I don't have any problems with the encroachment of both of those setbacks. But then I also, on the other side, I don't see why we're doing this, because there seems to be plenty of room and opportunity not to do that. So, 2 minds. I just contradicted my whole self. So I don't really have a problem with that. But what I do have a problem with, I think, is more aesthetic. I think the building was designed from the inside out. The interior is quite nice. It lays out, really flows well. When you get to the exterior, it seems kind of cold. The windows are random. It just doesn't seem pleasant. It's a wonderful creekside setting. It seems to be a modernist kind of, I wouldn't even call it really modern. It's not I don't think it's carefully laid out on the exterior. The interior looks really nice, actually. I like the layout a lot. But the exterior, it seems random and not really caring, doesn't really contribute to the neighborhood as we would like. The green roof doesn't make much sense to me. It seems like a token. There's no way to get up there and access it. I don't know really what it's contributing. I like the green roofs, but if it's just going to go unmaintained, it'll just become a maintenance issue. A tree will start growing on there. You won't know it until it's already dug into the waterproofing. Other comments are, I think the windows are, like I said, are awkward and randomly placed. It's not a very warm setting to the street. It's rather cold. And but I do not have any problems with the setbacks. That's my statement.
Can I talk about the setbacks?
Sure, Commissioner Jennings.
I don't necessarily have a problem with the setbacks either. My concern about it is namely procedural, and I don't want to be like a super stickler about this stuff, but it does seem that what we're being really, based on the architect's representation of it, we are being asked to approve a front yard, an extension of a front non-conforming wall, and it is a weird shaped lot, and so I think like the perception from the frontage from the road is not the same as it would be if it was a right angle. But I don't think we have the information before us we weren't presented with findings to approve that, and I don't think it was noticed. And so I don't think I could vote in favor of this project tonight just because of the procedural issues. And I think, that may have just been something that wasn't super clear on the plans. And so I certainly don't fault staff for that at all, but I just don't think we can approve this project based on our code, because we are being asked to approve an extension, a vertical and horizontal extension of a non-conforming wall, period. But that said, I think if they came back and provided information to support why we should make those findings, I think there are probably reasons we could do that. And then, I'm less concerned about the creek setback, understanding that at the point where there seems to be the encroachment issue, it's culverted, so I don't think that the policies that favor greater setbacks are implicated as directly here. Let's see. I do think, though, that if we're going to approve the encroachment into the creek setback, we should have some findings that specifically address why it's not an issue. So I would like to I would request, if this comes back, that we try to build out those findings a little bit, and to try to address the fact that, we're supposed to consider, our code says that we should consider these measures in the creek restoration report, and so recognizing that that might not be possible, I think maybe we should do the best we can. It does say, consider requiring measures to preserve and restore the creek area. And I'm not saying that we necessarily have to impose additional mitigation, but I think we need to do the analysis on those issues. And then, overall, I do think that it seems like a very large structure. I understand it's still, within the FAR that's allowed here, but it's an exceptionally big lot for Albany. So I think it does create, a large house when you apply those FAR standards. That said, I appreciate the architect's thoughts about, why the perceived bulk is not so great from the street in particular. And, I think when you look at the renderings that are just, straight from the south side, it comes across a little different than it would to most individuals. So I can probably get comfortable with that. I do think that the skylight projection is really jarring, and others may have different views on that, but to me it seems incongruous with the rest of the house. That's it.
Okay. I think that we have an open creek here, a daylighted creek, a flowing creek, and I think it is a unique resource. Our 20-foot setback requirement is really minimal. I don't think there's any other cities around here that are that generous as we are with our creek setbacks and the way we analyze and condition development adjacent to the creek. It doesn't come up very often. This is a unique lot, and that it has come up here. I could not vote in favor of something that encroaches into the creek setback of the open creek for sure. And I'm a little bit unclear from from looking at the plans and from my own field work, where the culvert ends, where it begins, and where those measurements are taken. But I think that the project should be redesigned so that it absolutely honors our creek setback requirements, which are just minimal, just so minimal, going back to pre-1978. And we need to do better in protecting our creeks. So I look at it as, for me, it's a no vote. Design review point, my design review thoughts is it's pretty large. It's a very large building, and I kind of agree with other people's comments. Five bedrooms, 2 off-street parking spaces is a bit of a concern for me. I guess that the site is large enough so that it will allow a large enough building to have that, to do that. But I really think, for me, it needs, it may be a nice project, but it's in the wrong location and the wrong site, and it does not respect the creek setbacks sufficiently to get my vote. I'm an automatic no at this point.
Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up. I guess my real issue with the creek setback is the definition.
Yeah.
I still don't know if it's water's edge or, can you go to one of the slides with the section through the house and the creek? Even one of the elevations would show it. Yeah, let's see. There's a site section. Well, even there, it's, but I don't know which set of
Do you want
plans
to see
we're on
the
anymore.
building section?
It's a section through the building plus the site going down to the creek. Yeah, right there.
Okay. Okay.
If you say top of natural bank,
Well,
I don't know where that is exactly, and I'm
yeah.
afraid it's a little ambiguous, so I don't know what quite to do here.
Yeah. No, it is.
Because if it's top of the natural bank could be construed as the top edge where it stops sloping and goes level. That's one way to look at it. It could be the top of the water edge. At its seasonal high, I don't know.
Yeah.
Poorly worded.
Pardon?
Okay.
Well, I don't know. It's not public comment period, but I'd be happy to hear what she has to say. But at the same time, I don't really quite know how to apply the standard. And if it is at the top of the slope and then we go 20 feet, that's a much different animal than water's edge.
You're right.
And that puts the addition. I really have no problem with the existing use being where it is and being next to the culvert. It's there. You just have to do some engineering with Public Works to make sure that, full disclosure, my house has a culvert under one corner of the property, and we went through engineering and Public Works, and we just had to do extra concrete piers to support the corner near the creek, because essentially it's all landfill. It's just backfill.
Yeah.
And they didn't do it in an engineered manner. So it's basically a corner built on a very loose, soft material. So, but that's solvable. That's not a problem. And so I don't have any problem with the existing part of the house encroaching. The other part encroaching near the edge of the culvert, I'm really not sure what to do. I really would prefer to see a topographic site survey.
I agree. It's missing.
And that would allow me to position the house, the water, the slope, see where the contours kind of stop. And then I would just need some guidance from staff, I think, on how to define that term in the.
Is it defined in municipal code? Is it center of creek, top of bank?
It says from the top of the natural creek bank.
It's incredibly vague.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
There is no
if you're in the
cross-reference.
hills, the natural creek bank could be 500 feet up.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in this case, the creek bank is quite a bit up the slope.
It is.
I think it has to do with
It
the,
is.
like a 2-year or 5-year event,
What like the highest seasonal water edge is, or?
yeah, that's how I've seen it done in Oakland, where they have the big, it just
Yeah.
slopes forever.
How
Then
do
you
we-
need a hydrologic study to figure it out.
Okay. Well, it's been pretty wet last week, so maybe we were close. So I guess I don't know how to decide that point, in a way. I mean, I don't mind this section that's, like I said, over the culvert, but I would not support an addition, new work that is in the creek setback.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but we may be far enough away from the natural creek bank. That's just very hard to say.
The story polls that it looked to me like they're about 10 feet from, the one on the one corner is about 10 feet from the natural bank, the top of the bank, and probably about 15 or 18 or maybe not, but less than 20 feet from the water. And I think that's too close, and I think that would be a mistake on our part to approve a project that is that close to the creek. Creeks do change, creeks do move, banks cave in. The survey says there's an old retaining wall there. Who knows what natural processes are going to erode that, and how the creek course will change over the life of the building. We don't know that, and so I think it's too close.
Well, if I may continue, getting back to the perceived front facade, I don't think it's really going to be much bigger or that much different than what's there. The wall, it looks bigger in the front elevation, but that wall is sloping back like the architects, angling back like the architect said. So I don't really have a problem with the front. I do feel like the windows there are a little bit random, a little bit unresolved with the corner window. I really like the high corner window, but then its relationship to the window next to it seems a little awkward. Conceptually, it seems like you have this hard shell wrapping around the whole building, and then an open, softer space looking out towards the creek. I guess that's kind of the idea. I find the north wall to be not very inspiring. A lot of stucco, not a lot of relief on the north side. It's what your neighbors are going to look at. I have to say I really don't like the projection sticking up. I appreciate the idea of the skylight and kind of the indirect light bouncing down. I understand that, but I don't really like that element right there on the edge of the roof. If I were the neighbor living next door, I don't think I would particularly like to have to look at that. I think it would look a lot cleaner and a lot neater if it was just a straight roof line across there. I mean, the skylight can be flat, and even if the skylight is slightly north-facing, you're still going to get a lot of light into it. I think it would work. You would get a little more direct light bouncing around your hallway or your stairs, but I would think that should be eliminated, dropped down. I don't really like it as a design element or something that I would have to look at. You've got mixed materials in the front and the side with the wood, but maybe this north side, the north side could be somehow dealt with again in some manner to differentiate a little bit the facade and provide some relief from the stucco. And then I guess back to the big question. I don't know about the creek setback and kind of how to resolve that question, because I can't really tell if the addition is in the creek setback or not. If it's not, I don't have a problem with it. But I think, I'd almost like to see, just request a continuation and have a site survey that would help us, and then some kind of consensus on where that boundary is for the top of bank. I don't know how we get there, but I think we should study it. And this is probably an issue that we should revisit as a commission in some sort of further study with some interested expert groups in the future.
I'm sure someone's figured it out already.
Somewhere, yeah. We would need to incorporate that.
And if I can just add if I can just add a few comments onto that. As it relates to the creek setback, kind of my thoughts on this is I don't have so much, the existing building, it appears at least encroaches at the front corner into the creek setback. I personally don't have any concerns about a vertical extension of that same building form. So it looks like they're increasing the building a couple feet on that side. It's a little less than on the north side. So that I wouldn't have a concern with, because I think to me the whole issue with the creek setback is sort of building new foundation and sort of tapping into sort of undeveloped parts of the parcel. With that said, though, I do think this is a large enough property that it's hard for me to make the finding that there's no other way to redevelop the property without encroaching on that. So, the vertical extension aside, there's a lot of extra space on this lot where things could be shifted or redesigned to avoid any setback impacts. And I kind of feel like, when it's not just extruding up an existing footprint, and when there's not something terribly unusual about the size or the shape of the lot or a consistent development pattern in the neighborhood, I'm kind of struggling with what our justification is to allow that type of an encroachment. And I don't feel like maybe all of the alternatives have been exhausted to see if there could be a more sort of code compliant reconfiguration or development of the lot. With that said, I think this parcel is ripe for redevelopment. I think, putting the existing property could certainly use some improvement. I think I appreciate the efforts for the green design and the contemporary architectural style and, the innovative ways of bringing light into the building. I think all of that I'm open to, but I would agree with what my commissioners have talked about requesting a continuance. I do also think we might have a process issue here for the front setback possibly, and so it might give us some time to resolve that. But at the same time, I would challenge the architect to look at a way to at least not increase the footprint encroachment onto the creek setback or any other sort of setback for that matter. I think on a lot of this side there are alternatives. Again, appreciate the ADU and increasing the density. I think it's really exciting to see people taking advantage of the state ADU programs and increasing housing and diversity of sizes. I think that's all great. And then the only comment on the architecture that I would have is that I do think the fenestration pattern could use a little work. I know you're going for sort of a minimalist look, and I think, again, devil's in the detailing of those contemporary projects. And I think if you're using, a hard coat stucco or a 3-coat stucco and a really deep reveal on those windows and a high quality window product, it could look really great in being very simple. But some of those details I feel like weren't on the plan set, so it's hard for me to tell, if that is the case or isn't the case. So I would just, say that if that's the intent, to really show that design intent, give us a window detail, specify the type of materials and all of that. And I think maybe the fenestration pattern could use a little bit of finesse, at least on the front facade. I'm a little less concerned about how the architecture feels as it opens up to the creek. I think that to me feels a little bit more personal of use of architecture and a little less about giving back to the public realm in the same way. So I'm more focused on what sort of the front facade really feels like architecturally. So, and I would agree, I think in this project, I know we don't always get topo maps for projects, but I think on this one that might help make everyone comfortable with decision-making moving forward. So, I would be open to making a motion for a continuance with that feedback and maybe a non-date specific, so we can.
Date uncertain. Yeah.
Date uncertain.
I'll move continuation of planning application 19014 at 1146 Evelyn for continue to a date uncertain.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Great. So we will see that back in the coming weeks. All right, we are on to the Next item on our regular agenda, item 6-2, planning application 19-013, design review and conditional use permit for building lift and second-story deck at 825 Carmel.
Correct. Once again, design review, conditional use permit at 825 Carmel. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 3,500 square foot lot with a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,297 square foot split level home built in 1925. City records show minor repair work done to the home. Here's the street view of the property as it sits today. Project requests. The project applicant is requesting design review for a building lift and second-story deck enclosure. They're also seeking a conditional use permit to vertically extend the existing non-conforming south and east walls. Not under the commission's purview is an accessory dwelling unit, which is associated with the building lift. The ADU is proposed to be 650 square feet with 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. Here's an existing elevation of the property, and here's what's proposed before you. And then this is just a partial floor plan indicating the proposed deck, the existing deck that's proposed to be enclosed. And then this is illustrating the enclosure, which would accommodate a full bathroom and a closet for this bedroom. Exceptional design, projects which exceed a 0.45 FAR subject to exceptional design as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The exceptional design treatments include maintaining the existing Spanish colonial style of the home, a new garage door, a new porch and staircase, deep niche detailing, new windows with true divided lights, a new window box with Spanish tile detailing, corrugated metal awnings, metal railings, and concrete landscape stairs. A conditional use permit is required to vertically extend the existing south wall and a portion of the east wall located 0.4 feet from the property line. The required side yard setback for this subject property is 3 foot 6 inches. The wall extensions are proposed to accommodate the new bathroom and closet for the existing bedroom. This would result in a maximum height of the home to increase by about 2 feet 6 inches overall. Parking. There's one off-street parking space located in the single-car garage. The proposed project scope does not trigger any additional off-street parking. Per state law, the accessory dwelling unit is not subject to additional off-street parking as there is a bus stop within 0.1 miles from the property. Staff has not received any correspondences regarding this project. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA, and staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the findings and conditions of approval. With that, we can answer any questions you have.
Any questions of staff?
Yeah, so the conditional use permit, it's basically just that little 2-foot section of rear balcony that's meant to go at the 6 inches.
Correct. So it's that.
And if that wall had been just closet eliminated or shrunk and the wall was 3 feet back, then there wouldn't even be a conditional use permit issue at all? Is that what I'm assuming?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
What?
Okay.
Wait a minute, wait a minute. How can you say that? The building's being raised.
Only the front part.
Yeah.
The back part's not changing, except for adding a little corner at the back.
Yeah.
So it looks to me like you're going to cut the building, separate the front from the back, lift it,
And
join the levels, which I think is brilliant, but it's like.
So, yeah, and so unsplitting it, raising it does not require a conditional use permit?
Well, I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah, so it's effectively an unsplitting of a split level.
Yeah, right.
And putting everything.
I saw that in the report. I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, does that require a use permit to lift the front part or is conditional use permit?
The conditional use permit pertains just to that rear deck.
Okay.
The design review is for the.
But design review.
Design review goes for the whole thing.
Design review goes for the whole thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. I get it.
Otherwise, I have no
Thank you.
questions except for that. But
I get it. Okay.
All right. No other questions. We will turn it over to the project applicant for a presentation.
Good evening. I'm Stacy Eisenman, the architect, and this is Amber Baker. She's the
project manager. And we actually have a 3D model. If that's helpful, we can plug it in. Would you like me to do that? Do I just take this?
You can put it in there and we'll give you that computer.
Can I just pull it out?
Do you have it on a flash drive?
No, oh, sorry, I was going to plug in my laptop instead. Is that possible?
Oh, I'm not sure if that's possible.
Well, tell you what then. Well, why don't we talk about it, and then if there's any questions, I can share my laptop screen. I'm sorry, I thought I had remembered that we could plug in our computers. Good. Well, the owners of this property, the Terasakis, the husband is a landscape architect. So I just want to reassure you that the garden will probably never be finished. He'll always be tinkering and playing with it. And the wife is a nurse, and they have had to care or watch the care of elderly relations. And so the goal here is really to unsplit the house, lift it, and have an income property that is at the lower level now. But their hope is that in the future, they can live on that lower level and rent the upstairs. And so we're keeping that in mind with accessibility, but it's a pretty tight space. So unfortunately, we're just not going to be able to have the accessible bathrooms that you were recommending for the other duplex. To achieve a more fluid staircase, we are required to unsplit the house. It was just getting too tight. And this was a little bit of a tough decision. We went back and forth with the engineer and the contractor and the owner, and in the end, it was the right decision. I think we are lifting that back half of the house just a little bit. So we're not just unsplitting, but we're unsplitting and lifting just nominally so that we can get the right height for the head clearance at the front part of the house. 1'6". 1'6". The challenge with this project is that we're trying to unsplit, we're trying to stay within the allowable FAR, and we're trying to get an ADU. And when you wrap all that in and we stay within the building envelopes and the height limits, we end up with this kind of funny space in the back on the lower floor that we don't want to have. We would like to occupy it, but we're not going to because we want to follow the code. But I want to bring this to your attention because Berkeley has done away with FAR, and Oakland also has done away with FAR under certain size lots, like a 4,000 square foot lot. There's no more FAR, and so if you're within the setbacks and you're within the height limits, these little spaces no longer get wasted, and so we could occupy the entire space. So I think I would invite Albany to maybe explore that a little bit. So in this case, we're proposing a smaller ADU that fits the code, and then the hope is that maybe in 10 years or 15 years, if Albany changes its code, then they might be able to occupy the back part. And I'll tell you what, if we can come back up if there are any additional questions.
Did you have slides of the 3D model in your presentation that we had included in our
I'm not
application?
Were they included with the originals?
Yeah,
We
there
have
were
the.
two images at the back of the set.
It's on the plan set?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, we have that, yeah.
I think they're the last two, in the last page.
Yeah, it is, A33.
So if we can't show you the 3D model in real time, you can at least look at those images.
Oh, sorry.
So just to clarify,
Yeah,
so
you just didn't get
the back part is being lifted.
It's being lifted
Okay.
1'6", and that's only
Okay.
because we need the head clearance at the front half of the house.
Okay, I couldn't tell that from, maybe there was just
It's
too
modest.
fine grain of the details and all these little elevation markers for me to
Yeah, there's a lot.
catch that. We've had a lot of projects to review for tonight, so.
So the challenge for us has been to get a front staircase up to the main second floor unit in the front garden that feels part of the house and part of the garden, and kind of gives a little bit to the neighborhood.
And so this is where we are right now. We are planning to kind of encapsulate a little bit of a larger tree, and then there will be a deck and a patio at the rear of the house as well. So we just wanted to point that out to you. We're trying to keep the character of the original house, as well as some of the architectural decisions that the client had made previously on his own as an architect himself.
I did just have one question, and maybe you could just talk a little bit about what the intent was for that, the 4-inch deep niche at the front bottom corner. Just maybe talk a little bit about what the purpose of that is, or?
It's for an espalier. He would like to have, what was the tree? He'd like a pear espaliered in that space. So we're giving a place to attach the lines and possibly have, I don't know.
And staying within the Spanish colonial character of the house that feels appropriate.
But it'll effectively, the intent is for it to be filled in with greenery.
Yes.
Effectively. Great, okay.
But not with lines.
Yeah.
With a tree.
Great.
Something that's structured.
Got it.
Has structure.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions of this project applicant?
Couple.
Not right now.
And the plan shows you have a little Spanish tile over the window. Oh, I see what's going on. All right, I misread that as a covering over the side door. That's over the second floor window. Got it.
There's a language of Spanish tile details and edges, and that is being carried to the back. But the owner, Steve, had also created these corrugated metal, more like a modern interpretation. And when you look at the shape of the corrugated metal and you look at the shape of the Spanish tile, there's a relationship. And so there's these awnings that we're also creating and extending that pick up that character.
The awning's over the garage entry and it wraps around and goes over the door. Yeah, those aren't shown in the.
Over the master bedroom windows and
driveway side.
the correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not shown. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Well, one more question. The back was, it's all paved. Is that because of the second unit needing the?
We're trying to make that more of a level exit out into the back. So the patio is sunk into the site to be more at the same level as the downstairs.
Would you be willing to shift to the site plan?
And then there's a raised deck, and I didn't quite follow.
So that's the sunniest corner of the yard, and it's a place where you can sit. Oh, sorry. That's the sunniest corner of the yard, and so the idea is that's a place where you could sit and have a table or some outdoor furniture and enjoy the sunshine. So we were just creating a little platform there for that purpose.
Okay, thank you.
With that, we'll open it up for any public comment on this item. Nope. All right, seeing none, public comments closed. Turn it back.
Okay.
Any comments? Anyone want to jump in?
Okay, I guess I could start. And I do have some concerns, I think, here. Let's see, first of all, I like the design a lot. I don't have a problem with raising the house. I think what you've done with the front stairs and the entrance and all of that is really elegant, and that it will look really well. It'll look great. My concern is an FAR concern, and I know that we don't count that unconditioned space that's down in the back. But it is a big area. It could be a whole nother bedroom. It's a large area. And so it seems to me that it's possible to a redesign that would sort of eliminate that existing bedroom and put that existing bedroom downstairs in what's now the unconditioned space would still allow you to have an ADU in the front, and then 2 bedrooms, 1 upstairs and 1 downstairs. I know that's not the applicant's program or their intention, but To me, the visually, this would exceed the FAR because the bulk of the house is going to be greater than the limits we have adopted of 0.55. It'll look bigger, and we'll be keeping that 4-6 inch setback by the garage to the adjoining property line, where the eaves of the two houses are only about that far apart. So that's an existing condition, and I think we could eliminate that with a different kind of design, but I know that's not what they want to do. And I know that we've approved projects in the past with unconditioned space and look the other way about it. I have a problem with that because I think, visually speaking, if this project is built, it's going to have an FAR of 0.6 something because of that large volume of unconditioned space at the back on the ground floor. Otherwise, it's a really nice design, really nice, very nice job, and I really like the front of it. There's a lot to like about it. So.
I guess with that, I would ask just a question of staff. I mean, do we feel like this is code compliant? Is there an allowance in the code for us to designate space as unconditioned?
Yeah, we've had that happen in the past on other projects, and it's not uncommon for the commission to also require deed restriction, just to ensure the deed restriction so that the space can't be converted unlawfully, and
yeah,
got it.
It's a disclosure issue, that type of thing.
Okay, thanks. Anyone have any other comments?
Well, I like your project. I think it's great. Kind of love the little technical way of lifting part of it to re-level the floors. You know, I think that's really cool. Be sort of a technical feat to chop it apart and put it back together. Like a mad doctor was. I don't really have a big problem with the unconditioned space. You know, it just seems more coherent to have the unit at the front for accessibility, and the separate unit above seems fine to me. I think it would be difficult to rearrange everything.
Yeah.
I mean, then I don't know how you do it. Give up an upstairs room, and I don't know. So it seems like a small trade-off for what to me looks like a very nice project. You know, I mean, in making things a little more ADA-friendly, universal design, I think if that's your goal, you should work your plan to make it happen somehow. You know, if that were my goal, I sure as heck would make sure I could roll around in a wheelchair till I'm 95, you know, or whatever. But, you know, I'll leave that interior modification up to you, but I would really encourage you to just play with the plan a little bit and, you know, roll in, shower. We've done it before on some of my projects. It's not that hard to do. Barrier-free shower, et cetera. Otherwise, yeah, I think it's nice. I think you know, this front stairs are always a challenge, and I think you've solved that pretty well. It's nice to have that little second or bottom transition zone. I think that'll work well. So, yeah, I'm quite pleased with this project.
Yeah, I'll be brief. I think it's also a very attractive project, and while I'm not crazy about the, you know, the sort of technical workaround on the FAR, I think I understand the challenges that you're working with on the site, and there's certainly precedent for approving projects in similar circumstances with appropriate conditions of approval, and, you know, I would favor a deed restriction to that effect as well, just because I know that is what we've required for similarly situated projects. And, you know, to your point that if Albany does decide to get rid of FAR as sort of an independent standard, that's, you know, it's always something that could be revisited in the future, so.
Great.
couple comments, generally, if you have a landscape architect, I won't comment because.
Professional
But I
courtesy.
think on the part that maybe falls between the two is the steps, the entry. And I understand, I listened to you, and when I was looking at it earlier before, it's bothering me that kind of journey you need to take to get to the front door. It seemed a little bit long as a way to reduce it. It might get old after a while. And the fact that you have 4 steps, and you have 7 steps, then you have 4, then you have 3, and it's just, that's kind of, it's hard to memorize that. So you're always trying to, always have to look down. It's not a pattern you're going to all of a sudden know 4, 3, 4, 3. You're going to have to have a light on. You're going to have to look all the time. And so it's wondering if it could be simplified if you did the 4, the 7, and then, or maybe 5, 7, 5, and then you wouldn't need that third 3 steps. Although I know you're trying to make a little plinth there for some reason.
Starting from the bottom.
Yeah.
4 from the bottom.
So you have, when you walk out, then you drop down 3 more steps to get towards the driveway. So instead of going up there, if you just went straight across and then you started your rise, you'd only have 3 runs rather than medium-sized run, long run, medium run, and then a little teeny short run. And so it's just a lot of steps. And I know you wanted to make a presence to the street, and maybe they do that in some way. Having worked on a lot of steps, I work really hard to make a rhythm because I've done projects where they didn't have a rhythm, and you pay for it. You really do. You start tripping and falling, and it's not good. The other comment, aside from on the side of the sidewalk, seems like you have a lot of extra paving you don't really need. It's like default paving. I know you have it in front of your side entrance underneath I think it's your first entry off the driveway, there's paving, that makes sense. But before that, you have what is called out as, hatch indicates decorative paving scored pattern joints. It seems to be just filling space. And the other side, you have gravel just filling space. So you have a lot of just filling space. But why am I commenting? That's your landscape job, so let you do it. I'm not going to take that back. I'm just going to concentrate on the steps. Let you do the rest. So there you go.
I guess I'll just add my final 2 thoughts. I don't have a whole lot to add here. I think it's a nice project. I think I appreciate the sort of retention of the existing architecture because I do think the existing building does have sort of a quality architectural character to it. So I appreciate that there's been thought put into adapting the building to sort of the needs of the family now and giving it a new life, but retaining that that architectural style. So I think you've done a nice job. I appreciate that you've incorporated high quality window materials and they're specified on the plans. And I would agree with my commissioners about adding that deed restriction just so that we maintain that consistency in that unconditioned space. But other than that, I don't have anything to add and I would support the project. Did you, Commissioner Kent, want to add any conditions of approval or give it as a suggestion to the applicant, or how did you want to?
Yeah, I would say you can work to make at least those 3 runs at the top. Let's see, you have 5, 7, and 4. Maybe 4, 7, and 4. And then you can keep those. It's up to you if you want to keep those other steps. Okay, and one other little comment is 7.5 is a high rise. It's a pretty high rise. I know, it's just, it's going to be a trudge.
Yeah.
We're trying to stay within the setbacks.
Yeah, that's right.
They're already encroaching in the.
Yeah, you probably stuff.
Allowed for, so it's a very constrained environment.
Yeah.
Okay, understood.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
Um,
You want to make a motion?
I forget all that was said.
I don't think there's anything else.
Just my comment? Okay. I make a motion to approve with the correction of trying to work to make the step pattern more symmetrical, a more a predictable rhythm.
And the deed restriction for the unconditioned space.
Oh, I didn't catch that one. And the deed restriction for the unconditioned space.
Okay. Okay.
Just one amendment to make.
Could the deed restriction be conditional so that if Albany does away with FAR, then the deed restriction could ultimately be lifted?
Yeah.
Could it be written in such a way?
That makes sense to say so long as the current regulations limit the FAR.
We could effectively timestamp it so that it's reflective of the.
And should the code change to no longer need it, the deed restriction's null and void or something like that?
Right.
Yeah, that would be fine.
We don't want it to be, okay, thank you.
That's our intent, yeah.
I think that works.
Great.
So,
Second on that?
I can second.
Okay.
Great, so we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye. Mhm.
You're aye? Okay. Great, so that application passes. Do you guys have story polls on this one? Your story polls up? Yeah, okay. Keep the story polls up. They're up for a 14-day appeal period. Great. 14-day, right?
14 days.
Am I getting that right? Still new to this? Great, so now we are on to the last item on the regular calendar here, 6-3, planning application 19-009, design review for a new two-story duplex at 936 Madison.
And I need to recuse myself because I live a few doors down, so I'll be in the hall.
Oh.
Yes, so this project before you is a new story duplex at 936 Madison. Some background on the property. The subject property is a 3,750 square foot lot with a 640 square foot garage structure. The subject property owners also own the adjacent property at 934 Madison. City records show no property history for the subject parcel as it does not have an address formally assigned with the city. Should the project scope be approved, the city will assign each unit a residential address. And here's a street view of the property as it sits today. You can note the garage in the background. Project requests. The project applicant is seeking design review approval for a new two-story duplex. The ground floor is proposed to be a one-bedroom, one-bathroom, 579 square foot residential unit. The second floor is proposed to be a three-bedroom, one-bathroom, 983 square foot residential unit. This will result in a 1,562 two-story duplex with a maximum height of 22 feet 11 inches. Also within this project scope is an accessory dwelling unit, which is exempt from commission review, but is proposed to be 500 square feet and will have one bedroom, one bathroom as well. Here are the existing site conditions from the site survey. Note the detached garage and the APN number. There's no formal address. And here are the proposed site conditions with the proposed two-story duplex at the front of the property with the ADU at the rear. And here before you is the proposed front elevation and exceptional design. Projects which exceed a 0.45 FAR subject to exceptional design as reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission. The exceptional design treatments include painted stucco and cement board shiplap exterior cladding, a gable roof with skylights, aluminum clad doors and windows, a new fence on the south side, and a concrete paver pathway leading from the front of the property to the rear, and also the ADU. Per section 2828030 of the Albany Municipal Code, two-family dwelling units are required to provide a 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit or 3 parking spaces in total for a duplex. The applicant is proposing 3 off-street parking spaces. 2 are proposed to be underneath in the open carport at the front of the building, while 1 space is proposed at the side yard at the rear of the property. The subject property is 0.2 miles from a bus stop on San Pablo. Thus, no additional parking is required for the ADU per state law. Staff has received no correspondences regarding this project. The project is categorically exempt from CEQA review, and staff recommends that the Planning and Zoning Commission review and approve the proposed project subject to the findings and conditions of approval. With that, we're happy to answer any questions.
I think I have a question. I was confused by the survey. Are there 2 parcels here or 3?
There's 2 parcels.
2 parcels.
Both of
but
which
they were
are
originally 3. The survey shows 3 lots, and so I'm.
Oh, those might be the old lines.
That's the old lines.
Yeah, yeah.
So 2 parcels.
There's 2 parcels. The primary residence is adjacent, and that's on a 3,750 square foot lot. The parcel before you which has the existing garage, is also 3,750.
Both the same size. Got it.
So they meet the minimum lot size
Okay.
requirements.
Thank you.
Great. Presentation from the project applicant.
Oh, okay. Yeah, if you want to put it in there.
I apologize. And then do you load it or should I?
Go to the folder. There you go.
Sorry, I have
If
a
you
map,
go-
so I, the Lex are down here.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, but do you have SketchUp on? That's what I'm saying.
I don't think this is SketchUp.
Okay, okay. Okay, no worries.
Actually, does your laptop have a HDMI?
Yeah,
thing?
it does.
Do you want to try that?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, you know what, I have my, no. It looks beautiful on my computer. Okay. Well, if we need it, I can, once again, I can pass it around. It's not, we have a 3D model with the two adjacent properties, so I'll tell you what, let's put a pin in that. So Stacy Eisman again, and this is Ashka Bilakim.
Stacy, behind you there.
Oh, no.
We just have the site survey.
Okay. And we're here to represent our owners, the Driscolls, and they purchased 2 lots. It was originally 3 at some point, and now it's 2. There's 2 addresses. And one is, for the most part, empty except for a dilapidated garage that really needs to come down. And the other is the home that they're living in. And there's a second accessory building that bridges the property line that they're going to modify so that it's legal. What they'd really like to do is invest in a duplex on the lot, and that will be their income property as they get older, and they would like to continue living in the house. And then they have 2 kids. One is at KALB, and the other may be, excuse me, living with them in the future. And so there's this kind of vision of these ADUs where the kids can live, or that they could have one of the apartments and rent out one of the ADUs as well. So today we're asking for, excuse me, we're asking for permission to put a duplex and an ADU on the lot next door. Sorry, I have a little bit of a tickle. So we have several projects that are all having challenges with the deed restriction, and this is one of them, because they are going to be living next door. They're not going to be living in the building themselves. And so by putting a deed restriction that it has to be owner occupied is a bit of a hardship in this case, because they're going to be living adjacent as opposed to on the property. So we wanted to bring that to your attention. If it's a requirement in order to move forward, then would you be willing to allow the children to be considered the owners? So I'd like to open up that conversation today, and if it's something that it's not appropriate and we need to move it on, I'd like to make the deed conditional so that we have the opportunity to examine it a little bit more closely as we get towards the building permit. I'm sorry. As I said, the larger unit is above, the second unit is, the smaller unit is below. We studied where the parking could go on this property, and it really wanted to be easily accessed in the front. And so we've tried to create the most aesthetic parking to the street. We're advocating, I know that I'm sorry, would you please speak to the open trellis on the side?
Sure. So we were trying to create something more attractive rather than just a gaping hole. So we are proposing on the sides to have a trellised kind of a wall that provides at least 50% of openness. And in the front, we're using a double column that brings in a little bit more of a traditional feel to the architecture, and also kind of decorates or adorns the opening. Another concern about, well, not concern, but the decision to place it in the front was to avoid having the future tenants driving back and forth on a driveway and creating more disturbance to our clients, and also potentially, running into something. So the shorter the drive, the better it was for this program.
They also wanted more garden in the back.
That's right.
And not filling it up with cars. Okay. The drawings speak for themselves. I'll tell you what, we might as well let you discuss it and then come back if there are questions.
I just had one clarifying question. When you're referring to the deed restriction, the owner occupancy, is that, I'm a little confused because I don't think the deed restriction that at least I think we were just talking about, to me, it wasn't to do with owner occupancy, but about not occupying that space.
It was.
Yeah, I think what
not
Stacy is
conditioning that?
referring to is the requirement for accessory dwelling units where either the main house or the dwelling unit has to be, one of the units has to be owner occupied. That's still a provision in our zoning code. Its enforceability is quite limited, but it's still a requirement on the books.
Is that an Albany-specific provision for ADU? Because that's not within state law, right?
Right. And last year, we're actually kind of keeping an eye on the second unit regulations. Last year, there was some proposal to potentially eliminate it. That legislation did not go through. I think it's back on the table.
13 pieces of ADU legislations that are pending at the state right now might include that?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. So right now, is the project code compliant with regard to density?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the issue that normally we deed restrict projects that come forward with an ADU have inherently as one of their conditions, like a deed restriction that says one of them need to be owner occupied.
Right. But I would also point out that we don't typically require that until the project is nearing the finish line and the certificate of occupancy is within sight. So there is a window of time where either the state law could come into play while this project is under construction, our code could be amended. I mean, there's any number of things that could preempt that.
Okay.
That's why we were asking if it could be conditional, because if the code changes or if something, if we're able to figure out a way to not have it apply here before we get the building permit or before we get occupancy, then we have means to not have to bring it back to the commission.
And I had one other question, either for staff or the architect. For the, on the front facade where you have the sort of open carport, if you will, is that due to an FAR issue where you can't sort of afford any additional conditioned space? Is that the issue?
The FAR right now.
And if it were like closed, but like an open slat garage door type thing or something where it was still like a non-conditioned space, but there was a termination of there was a wall of some sort, would that still be in compliance with the FAR regulations? I don't know, whoever wants to chime in.
The project applicant worked very hard with staff to establish the lattice work on the side to kind of be compliant with what we considered covered space and which would essentially be factored into FAR. So 2 sides and a roof technically counts as towards the covered space, hence the lattice work on the side with 50%.
They have to be solid walls in order for it to count towards the FAR. So if it's partially open, as this is, it technically doesn't enclose the space.
Yes.
And if it did have all of the sides covered, but there was some sort of permeability of those walls or, something that felt a little more solid, are we starting to eke into non-compliance there on the FAR? Or is there an exemption for the parking spaces, or has that already been taken?
I don't believe it's been taken, but the exemption is only limited to 220 square feet, so it's effectively a
for
single
garages,
car.
yeah.
Single car, okay.
Is there a way to grant a parking exception and put a car in the front? And I don't know, it just seems like, anyway, we should probably discuss it. I have more thoughts, but.
Great. Any other questions of the project applicant? We're getting late here.
Okay.
Okay.
But I could, if you guys are interested, I could swing by and just have you take a look.
I have a question, though. I have a question on the plans there on that east elevation. So explain the horizontal lines that look like a garage door. I mean, that's the back of the carport area?
Yes,
Mhm. Okay.
the
board material that will wrap around at the back of the.
It's this here.
So it's just to show.
Oh, I see.
And it should be really like a little finer line to show that it's in a distance, but it didn't come through in a PDF.
Okay.
In the back.
And it's not the same lattice work that's on the
No, it's not.
north side?
However, if we were able to do a,
Side parking.
potentially a garage
There's a
door
driveway
with
in the
this kind
side.
of a lattice work,
Okay. Mhm.
it's an added expense, but.
That's the one you talked about, it has to go.
Yeah.
So we have an issue with this tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a question too. It looks to me like you're be putting that, the garage or the carport where there's no curb cut now. So you'd be losing a street parking space. Am I right on that? Or would you be able to just move the street parking space? Mhm.
It's interesting. I remember there was a project that we reviewed that we had a smaller curb cut, and you were able to kind of drive into both spots.
That's what I was thinking
So
of.
we could try to maintain as much of the on-street
Might be
parking.
necessary here.
And there's a tree that,
Yeah.
I was going to ask Christopher if the value of this tree, but we're holding on to it, and
That's
so we'd
okay.
like to,
Yeah.
we'd like to kind of wiggle back around it if that's possible.
Right.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Kent.
Yeah.
And we're referring to the street tree?
Yeah.
The street tree.
Street tree, okay.
However, the curb cut is in a
Oh.
place, the current curb cut. Okay. The current curb cut is here because the driveway leading to the disused garage is on the other side. We're proposing to get into the back parking lot.
Right.
Here.
That's through the existing driveway, right?
Pardon?
That's the existing driveway that would access the parking for the
These two are
ADU.
the existing ones.
Okay.
We're proposing to put the one that would be adjacent to this
Right,
residence.
right.
So if we are plugging this in, we're kind of, we would really work this one to add it onto the curb area.
Right.
We have to provide something. I don't think this really gives a full spot. So there is a little bit of we're taking it away to provide it here
Yeah.
from the street.
We can also narrow this if we need to.
Yeah.
We could try to, we could get a fee out there.
Yeah. Yeah, eyeballing it out in the field, it looked like it would work. You could save that parking space, but I wasn't sure. Mhm. Yeah. Okay.
All right, should we?
So, one more question. So the house to the north is also owned, same owners, right? It's the three
Mhm.
houses?
Yeah.
Okay. Two driveways that are, you just mentioned that, and I missed it, the two driveways that are just side by side?
No, not really.
Potential of combining them to one?
No.
Well, they would like to still keep the properties separate and not create easements
Yeah, there is one.
across them.
There will be one.
Is the driveway at
But it goes
this
to
new project, is that wide enough really then to get back? It's,
Just the dimension we need we don't actually expect it to be used all that often.
7'7" to the from
and you need 7'6"
It's-
or
7
seven cement.
It's to meet the requirement, and if the parking space is needed because of the occupant back, then it will be used. But the goal is maybe not to need it. So if they have occupants that are cyclists or take public transportation, they may not need all 3 spaces.
So Stacy, let's see, you probably answered, and I missed it. I asked the question, and I didn't listen to the answer. Is there a possibility of combining both those driveways to one, even if you don't use that back lot that much? That way you get that whole 7 feet 7 to use for landscaping or something else.
It is something we talked about. The concern with that is that we then have to create easements for each of the properties, and they would like to very easily be able to give the properties to their 2 kids and not have easements crossing them. And so it was preferred to put side-by-side driveways, but with landscaping details in them.
Okay.
Great. That's all the questions. We will.
Okay.
Doesn't look like. Is there any public comment? Did you guys want to add any public comment?
No, we just think Stacy's done a great job with the architecture and looking forward to it.
Great. Well, then public comment is closed.
Okay.
Any comments? Anyone want to things off?
I'm starting, maybe now start again.
Go ahead.
I really like the design of the building a lot. I think it's really beautiful, actually. And I like the lattice work. I think it's all really quite nice. The driveway, parking, I think in the past we have allowed kind of a choking point for 2 cars to get into a parking, so that.
We've required a 14-foot, like if someone has a 16-foot pad, we've limited the driveway to 14 feet, so that, there's
To widen out into 2 spaces.
Yeah.
We've allowed it to go to 14.
fewer impacts on the curb.
And what is this here? This one's 15. So could choke a little bit more. But even if we did that, I'm not so sure that would be acceptable way to get to the back parking lot if we were looking at making that convenient. So then the question is, do we take that tree out or not? And would we, and whether we can get a parking spot. Yeah, it seems like if we gave up on that tree and we pushed that 14-foot entrance to the north as much as possible, we might get a lot on the street on the south side.
Yeah. There's only one thing I want to add to that. Street tree removal is subject to a separate permitting process through the Parks and Recreation and Open Space Commission. That's also a discretionary process in their purview, so that does create a little bit of uncertainty for the applicant. Our arborist would have to go out and assess the health of the tree and that sort of thing.
Boy, that photograph didn't look that healthy, but I don't know.
It didn't.
I'm curious, do you know what the species is?
Is that a camphor, like a really
It's a
worn down
camphor. I think it's a camphor, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it looked pretty rangy, but I don't know.
Yeah, probably on John's list of trees to be removed.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you this question, knowing that you're not our city arborist, but are those the type of trees that potentially compromise the sidewalk with root intrusion issues?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eventually.
They can. Yeah.
So I was just trying to figure some way where we could have our cake and eat it too, keep the tree, get a parking spot, but I'd rather give up on the tree, but as you're saying, that's a whole different permit process, and it might delay, uncertainty might delay the project, but maybe something you can look into. So other than that, I like the building the way it is. The backyard is not really a landscape plan, it's just a diagram. I can't respond to it much. If you aren't planning on using that parking pad back there, you don't need to pave it. Right? You can just have it as a lawn or some kind of drought-tolerant grass, and it could be called parking space. And maybe the same for the entry along the side. If you don't plan on using it, maybe you don't need to concrete it. You could in the future if you needed to. Is that legal, right? Does the driveway have to be concrete?
I think the parking space definitely needs to be some kind of substantial surface to hold the weight of the
Yeah, I
vehicle.
guess you're right.
Yeah.
So we'd have to kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be.
Maybe more pavers or something.
Or, blocks or something, yeah.
Oh, the Hollywood pavers, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Turf block.
Yeah, or it could be a little patio, make it like a patio that's all paved. you know. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the project. I think it's great to have a variety of living options, different units, different sizes. I think that helps the city. I think helps our housing crisis. I think it's great. It's not the first time I've heard that from parents whose kids are in college and the only way they're going to afford to come back is to have a little in-law unit in Albany or live in their childhood bedroom again for a couple of years. I'm very sympathetic to that. I think each unit seems well-planned. The deed restriction, I don't really know how you get around that. I think something that staff could just help us with on whether it's required or not, and then you have to make a decision whether you do it or not. I would be happy to see it sunset. Then I don't see why there would be such a problem having a shared driveway. That could create a lot more greenery on each side of the house. I mean, the kids can learn to share, hopefully, if they inherit the place after all these years. I generally would prefer to keep a street tree if possible. The one thing I don't like, and it's probably my least favorite thing, is the open carport. I really don't like that. There are a couple others on the street, and they look bad. I mean, it looks like bad 1970s architecture. Granted, your architecture is a little better, columns are a little nicer. And I had the same thought as Commissioner Waddy that why don't you have some sort of sliding doors in the front that are slatted? They could be like hanging gates or something, and that way, at least when the cars are there, you could just close it and have a lattice work instead of just an open carport. I think I'd be open to some kind of solution like that, as long as it doesn't trigger the FAR. And it sort of begs for having a garage, but obviously you're maxing out everywhere else, so that doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And I wouldn't want to derail the project just for that. But I think there could be some sort of gate-like structure across the front that could be sort of a barn door hanging or a track-like thing that could be made out of wood or sort of trellis-like that could be quite light and movable. And maybe only one side opens at a time, which also would be okay because then it's half hidden all the time. That would be one suggestion. Regarding the back, I mean, we've done things with grass paved, these little circles that are actually buried and support the weight of a fire truck, in fact. And you can just put soil in it and plant it, and it literally disappears. Or those concrete blocks that have openings that allow for planting, that's another option. So I'm fine with that. So, as long as there's some kind of solution for that front of the carport, I'm very happy to support this project.
I'll just add in my 2 cents on there. I also think it's a really nice project, and that front is what kind of bugs me as well for the carport. I almost wish the rear facade could be the front facade at some level. I think that's really nicely designed, and I appreciate how it's sort of, clearly the house has been designed in a sort of 360-degree capacity. I would be sort of inclined of the same if there's any way we can just add some condition. I mean, I trust your architectural judgment. If we could condition some sort of sliding door that somehow still complies with FAR that just doesn't make it an open carport. Do we think that's doable?
Yeah,
Is there a legal way for us to say it's closed, but it's not conditioned and counting against FAR?
Yeah, I think it creates a really interesting design challenge for the architect. So I'd welcome your thoughts, but I would think something could be achieved. I mean, we're talking about having something that's retractable effectively, so cars can park under the structure.
Right.
But it can be designed so that it's not solid.
Yeah. So if we can, and again, I would trust sort of the design judgment of that getting worked out with staff later, but maybe if we could just, to keep things moving, I think it sounds like there's consensus that it's a well-designed project and there's general support for it, but just want something that's not an open carport, basically. Okay. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I would agree. I mean, there might be, if it's some sort of permeability or three sides, I would suggest leaving the screening off one side and just screening the front, or doing some sort of planting on the sides or something, that a hedge or something that could screen the sides as effectively, something like that. And then, it's essentially like bypass doors is sort of what I was thinking. But you could put gates that open in and out, but that, then they're always going to stick out. You're going to have circulation barriers moving around them. So I think some sort of sliding bypass type door would make sense to me. Gate.
So what if we're done chatting up here, I'm happy to make a motion then to approve application 19-009 for the design review of a new two-story duplex and at 936 Madison, with the additional condition that there's some sort of enclosure screening feature that's installed on the front, and whether that's in addition to what's proposed currently or in lieu of making some openings on the side, but to have that front side sort of closed off in an architecturally integrated way with the rest of the architecture. And having the deed restriction have some language that allows for the children to be the property owner. I mean, whatever, I guess whatever's the standard for the city, but I think that's seems reasonable. I don't know. Staff, do you guys?
Yeah,
is there
I'm thinking we might, well, I'd like to run this through our city attorney, but if there's some way in which, similar to the other deed restriction, even though the circumstances are slightly different, if there's a way we can craft language in there that says, should this provision sunset in the city's municipal code or state law supersedes the city's authority, this becomes null and void.
Okay, great.
Maybe something kind of similar.
Maybe we could add the idea about the driveway, soft hardscape.
So incorporating soft.
A permeable green driving surface. What do we call that? Turf block.
A turf block type paver. Okay. With that, there's my motion.
What do we think about the driveway being combined? I'm a little ambivalent about that. I think the less driveway there is, the better. That would allow more green space on each side of the house.
That requires a lot of attorney fees to get easements on both properties.
Yeah.
So that's not an effortless.
Okay, well, understood.
Maybe just continued efforts to see if there's a way to narrow the proposed driveway and accommodate the two off-street parking. Okay. Motion made.
Okay. All right, I second that motion.
Okay.
Can't repeat it, but I can.
Make the call. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion? Aye.
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 Any opposed? Nope. Great. So that is approved, and keep your story polls up for 14-day appeal period.
Question?
Just to make sure that I understand about that deed. So the deed, if the deed for the ADU, potentially the laws have changed after we already built and got the occupancy permit and had to sign the deed in order to get the occupancy. But anyways, after that, if the laws change, you can say now the laws are different, you can
retract the deed, or the deed is forever?
So there's kind of the high-level way it's usually handled is the city would issue a quit claim. So that requires us to file paperwork with the county specific to the property. I want to check with our city attorney, because if we can put a provision in there that, you know, effectively timestamps the deed restriction, and I'm frankly banking on state law telling us by the end of the year that it's going to be a non-issue, you know, at that point, it effectively renders it null and void, and we could include some language in the deed restriction that captures that. If there's a change in local requirements or a change in state law, the deed, it's basically no longer applicable.
Great.
Thank you.
Sure. Great.
We were incredibly challenged with designing the most attractive carport.
It's a good try.
That's a good try.
Great.
It's not really their fault. It's just, it's generic to carports, really.
Exactly. All right, on to item 7, new business. Item 7.1, resolution of an intent to establish zoning designation at Cleveland and Washington.
Yeah, so for your review tonight, this is kind of our perfunctory exercise based on requirements of our own municipal code, that if there's a proposed rezone, whether that's parcel specific or an amendment to the ordinance, the commission has to take this initial step of a resolution of intention to take that future action. And so this particular parcel, it's a vacated Caltrans easement at Cleveland and Washington. It also encompasses Pierce Street Park. So right now, in the general plan, it has land use designations that were assigned and vetted under the EIR that was prepared a couple years ago. When we come back to you, we will have both actually the open space designation for the park, which didn't ever get properly established beyond the general plan land use, and then also this parcel that has a high-density residential land use designation within the city zoning code. So for your purposes tonight, it's simply taking action on the resolution of intention for this future action. When we come back to you, we do anticipate having more detailed exhibits in terms of where those property lines are going to go. With regard to the high-density parcel, we are in an exclusive negotiating agreement with Satellite Affordable Housing Associates. One of the terms of the negotiation process is to determine precisely where that property line goes. So we will ideally have that defined by the time we come back to you and ask you to formally act on the rezoning request.
So just to clarify, this is effectively like an initiation where it's just a
Exactly.
public notice that there will be a subsequent hearing where we talk about it.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that when I was reading it either. It's like,
Yeah, this is one of these kind of old provisions in our code that kind of like the watercourse overlay and a reference to a 1978 report. It's just there. So it's going through the exercise.
Okay.
We should probably go through the motion of opening the public
Oh,
comment.
sure.
But
Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing there's no one in the audience, public comment is closed on this item. We'll bring it back to the commission.
I would like to move to adopt the resolution of intention to establish a zoning designation at Cleveland Avenue and Washington Avenue.
I'll second.
Great. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Seeing no opposed, we have passed that resolution.
Okay.
All right. I guess on to item 8 on the agenda, announcements, communication, discussion.
Just the only thing I want to share is that at your next meeting, we're going to come back to you with your work plan for the 2019-21 window. So the city council has worked on their strategic plan. So from that, they've identified projects for the commission to work on over the course of the next 2 years.
All right.
And as part of that, just following up on the public comment that was today about sort of some of that discussion of historic aspects, it seems that's very timely as part of that larger discussion about work plan. Will there be time for us to kind of have that as part of that larger discussion?
Yeah, and in fact, that actually was included as part of the council's strategic plan.
Great.
Okay, good.
Very timely.
I agree with that.
When would it be appropriate? I think this creek ordinance needs updating.
Yeah.
Just seems so ambiguous.
Boy.
And outdated. I mean, not outdated in the sense of requiring a setback, but I think there could be other provisions or clarifications. I mean, is there some way we can
I think the wording, the word natural is just not right, because it's not natural.
No, they do
Lawn
make,
has not
no,
long
it
been
it
natural.
does exist, and I think geomorphologists and hydrologists do spend a lot of time figuring out what that means in case-by-case basis. So.
Perhaps we can
There's a
talk
bank-
about
there's
that
a
during.
bank- There's a type of bank, but I mean, a
Yeah.
natural bank, I think the term, once
Yeah.
you've
No, I don't know.
organized this
I don't know.
bank-
How do we go about
My son does professionally, but I don't know
doing
where
a
to start.
More clearer
It's a big deal.
version? Is
Right.
it something that you work
So I think
on,
what we would
or-
do in this situation, it's not part of the strategic plan right now, but I think it is something that you could ask to have included as part of your work plan, and then we would identify that for work within the next 2 years. I think candidly speaking, I mean, there's certain capacity that we have, to amend the code, but in terms of creek issues and FEMA requirements and that sort of thing, this may actually get into the realm where we may have to bring in an outside consultant to
Realm of
assist
what?
with that.
Of what?
An outside consultant to assist with
Yeah,
the. with the
I
review.
know, it would
There's
need,
some-
I think so, too.
it would
set
need
of
water
outside
experts,
standards.
it need water experts, yeah.
So we can have that sort of larger discussion when they bring the work plan. We can talk about
Yeah,
whether
so-
we want more or how we
Exactly.
feel about those aspects.
I
at
think
that
I think at the next meeting, we're going to effectively present you with a summary of what's been accomplished over the last 2 years, and then what the council has identified as part of the strategic plan. But you are certainly within your discretion to say, we also want to include the creek discussion as part of this, given how outdated the regulations are.
Great.
I wonder, would you be able to do a count and see how many, like, home parcels that have daylighted creek
daylighted
adjacent to them? You see, that's a little trickier, but,
That's a little trickier. We can
from
try and pull something.
GIS?
Google Earth, you might be able to do it, I don't know. But that's the most important part.
Culverts are another issue all over the city. That
There are a lot of culverts, yeah.
when I remodeled my house, the public works person told me that I was responsible for any repairs to the culvert under my property.
Yeah, and you have a creek, you have a creek there, huh? Yeah.
Well, it's
You
in a
must, yeah.
5-foot square box, but,
Yeah.
I mean, if they start failing, then it's going to be kind of a crazy situation. for
It
the
would
city.
be, it's not good, yeah.
We're not going to have every homeowner do their 50-foot or 20-foot or
Yeah.
100-foot
Yeah.
section. I mean, I don't know who would figure all that stuff out.
We've had other projects where, the home is built on top of a culvert, and we've required some pretty extensive engineering on that. So we have encountered this situation in the past.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking more in terms of like the culvert itself needing work or replacement, or where does that go?
So it seems like we're pretty far off of, what's on our agenda right now.
Yeah, okay,
And I
I'm
would just
just-
suggest that we table this, and since
Okay,
it's 10
fair
o'clock, for another conversation.
Okay, fair enough.
Great.
Thanks.
Well, with that, item 9, next meeting, Wednesday, the 27th.
2 weeks from tonight.
Great. We are then adjourned.
Thanks.
Okay.
And it will not be as long.
Sorry to keep you late. Okay.